deals here, get action items, and then get going on OSBA.
Oh, dessert is awesome, dinner was awesome.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, it's great.
Yep.
Sandy especially.
Ryan, did you get it?
I printed that one first.
There's a little bit more in there
Okay.
too. This one's for Sandy.
Is there one for Sandy too?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, I think I've got what I need here. Thank you.
Here's a pen.
I have one. Joe has one. Sure, Sandy.
Here's one right there. Okay, are you back?
I know. I'm sorry.
Somebody's gotta give you a bad time. Might as well be me.
Might as well.
Okay,
Superintendent goes with Susan or superintendent?
Michelle, are you ready on your end?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, we're gonna call the meeting to order. And we already had the board dinner, so we're done with that.
The most important.
And now we'll go to the action items. Approve the 23-25 certified bargaining agreement.
And I have some input
Okay,
when it's time.
well, do I hear a motion?
I would move that we approve the agreement.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, been moved and seconded, now we're gonna have some discussion.
Yes, indeed. I had a conversation this morning with PEA, and if you look at page 43 of the packet, which is the compensation section of the collective bargaining agreement, I don't want a split screen. Section I, there's a place in it about special position stipends.
Page what, 40?
43.
It was page 43 in the packet.
Okay, right, yeah. I'm just pulling it up now on my iPad.
Would you like me to read it out loud?
And I left my flash drive
I
somewhere.
guess ours is different because our page 43 is not like that.
Oh, okay.
Maybe updated.
I was just looking at the pages outlined in the board
Yes.
packet.
What's the pages?
Yes, the
Yeah.
It's the pages in the board packet.
Position-specific stipend.
Yep, position-specific
I
stipend.
can read them out loud.
Thank you.
So letter I, position-specific stipends. Specific positions within the district are acknowledged to require an additional stipend for purposes of recruitment and retention of qualified staff. For the 2023-2024 school year, individuals in the following licensed positions shall receive an annual stipend prorated by FTE for the position. A, special education teacher / case manager in the amount of $2,500. B, speech language pathologist / case manager in the amount of $2,500.
Thank you very much. The area of dispute comes in that the language on the TA paperwork, let me back up. We met, Steve Bell and Abby Couture and I met with the union on August 7th, the day ahead of our final bargaining session. At that, we set out some preliminary information on this article that was dated August 8th. And in it, it said, beginning in the 23-24 school year. Then we talked about, in the context of that meeting, taking a look at all the co-curricular schedule and all those with extra days and really being able to do that. And the interpretation that Abby and Steve and I had in that conversation was that because it was going to be a consideration with the co-curricular schedule, that we didn't want it to stand apart from anything else. And so we shifted the language to say for the 23-24 school year and put that forward on our last bargaining session on the 8th. For the 23-24 school year was what got approved, or what was the signature page. When PEA approved it, there was question about that. And PEA believed, because they had the documentation from the earlier meeting, that it should be beginning in and in the approval said, it's a typo, we're sure it's a typo. So
they would interpret this as being a one-year thing only?
they interpret it as being a 2-year
Into the contract.
Okay.
into the contract, and we had put it as for the 23-24 school year. That was our language change, to be able to move it forward. They are in earnest saying that really needs to be a 2-year commitment through the life of this contract. We can make that change in the contract as we approve it tonight, to, instead of saying for the, we can take out the year, we can just say we're gonna pay it.
Yeah.
And they don't have to re-ratify because of what they told their folks. The other thing that we can do is keep it as it was presented and craft a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement to be able to make the difference. We can go either direction, but it's kind of that good faith venture.
Well, I think the cleaner way of doing it is just put it right in the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
Rather than the MOU. And because they already ratified that, I was under the understanding that it was for the 2-year
Okay.
deal, not just the 1-year part of it. So-
Right, and some of that was my interpretation, and Steve and Abby, when we met, to be able to say, since it's all gonna be looked at, then we don't wanna single out anything, so we'll craft this language. And so, it wasn't destined to be a gotcha.
Yeah,
That was never our intent.
yeah,
And so in the conversation this morning, it was like, no, that's not our intent, but we have to decide the scope of the scope of the team's study.
well, I
And
think,
so I think that if we are in agreement to take out the date part of it and have that stipend for the special education folks be for the full term of the contract, we will be fine. They do not have to re-ratify.
okay, yeah,
So that would be my one recommendation in the language.
okay.
I have no problem with that.
All right, so Joe, you made the motion?
Right.
You wanna redo your motion to
Sure.
include that change?
I will move that we accept the contract with the change. I don't know if you have the.
Article 19,
It's
I.
Article
19, yeah, I.
19I, okay. By removing the language for the 2023-2024 school year to change to just be the full contract.
Awesome.
And I would second that again.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. That was in the spirit of working together. I know it will be appreciated.
Okay, now the appendices for the 23-25, is that a separate thing or?
I think I was just calling out that.
It was just calling out that those were the salary schedules and things like that, but it's all part of the same thing.
All part of the same, okay,
Yep.
so we're done with that?
Yep.
Consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as shown in our packet.
Very end of the packet. Did you see it, Rick?
I did, but
You want to look at it again?
I could turn my computer on, otherwise I'd be up here to see the bottom of the. It's very long time.
You can sit down if you want to. Mostly it's mostly resignations and hires and.
So
I had a question.
Abigail resigned and then she got hired back?
Yeah, we brought her
Or
back,
or
we
she
brought her,
brought back and then resigned?
we brought back, and then she resigned because she moved.
Oh,
And
okay,
we went ahead and did that because it would give us a stable person for that first couple of weeks of school,
okay,
and while we're in the process of finishing the hiring.
okay. I just want to make sure I had the right,
Yeah, that was,
okay.
I have a question on it, Rick.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in the coaches, and I don't know, I've been hearing a lot of stuff about Troy Meir.
We're gonna discuss that at the meeting on the 21st.
Okay,
That's a topic for the regular board meeting.
okay.
Thanks, Joe. Sure. All right, moved and seconded.
oh, who seconded?
Well, maybe we did with a second.
Aaron,
Aaron?
nobody else. I'll second.
Okay, I thought Joe already did.
No, sorry, I didn't.
This is.
Okay, now it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, 5-0 passes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can get on with the board training.
Awesome. Perfect.
Before you start
Janet.
that, does everybody have one of these packets? And Rick, because I'm gonna take off,
Oh, okay.
and
Oh, stuff I gotta
there's
sign?
stuff, oh, and there's an envelope in there for you and an envelope for Brian.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you got green, I got pink.
You got a bill?
I bet
You
yours is
reimburse
bigger.
me.
Only because my credit card bill. Okay, Janet,
All right.
we'll just turn the floor over to you.
Awesome. Great.
Okay, Brad, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, awesome. Well, just before I start, I believe just an hour and a half is what you gave me, but my, just so you know, my goal is not to rush through all the slides and whatnot. This is going to be a very interactive meeting, training, and so that's just my work style. It's gonna be very interactive. I will do a little bit of presentation, but I'm gonna be asking you a lot of questions, and you're gonna be thinking and doing some brainstorming today as well. And that's just great because that helps you retain the information rather than me just being up here talking the whole time. So I will honor the hour and a half. So what time is it right now? It is 5:30, so
Got a clock behind you.
perfect. So 5:30, 6:30, so 7 o'clock. It's hard stuff. Okay. So with that, I will get, or 6:30. All right, so I will get us started. Name is Janet Avila Medina, Board Development Specialist with OSBA, and so today you're just going to do a basic roles and responsibilities training. So why are we here? Well, to do this training, right? But also what's important about these type of trainings, especially for board retreats, because it's kind of like a board retreat, is my understanding, we'll maybe cover some topics and continue. So that's why I have this sheet here. We'll have like a parking lot. So if there is anything else that, you know, you're really interested that you hear from me, I will, as a facilitator, make sure I jot it down and we can discuss it if there's time, and if not, have it for maybe a future work session with all of you. So either with me or without me. So that's kind of why, so who am I? So as I said, Janet Avila Medina. I've been with OSBA, Oregon School Boards Association, OSBA for shorthand, since 2020, so almost 3 years. In November will be my 3rd year with OSBA. I am very passionate about education, just like all of you. I work at OSBA because I truly believe every child should have a fair, good education, public education. I've been through the education system in Oregon, born and raised from Hood River. And so that is my why. So what I just did right now is explain my why, and I'm gonna flip it over to you all because I wanna hear your why. And it's really important just in this space to allow during board retreats to get to know each other, right? You're in board meetings all the time, and you have a lot of things to discuss. I just saw you right now take some action items, right? And so there's sometimes not that space to get to know each other, and you know, sometimes at dinner at board retreats like you just did. I hope you had some great conversations. So that's kind of why we want to utilize a little bit of the space to get to know each other. So now you know a little bit about me. I did it in a short, quick minute. I want to know a little bit about all of you who are in the room. Why are you here? You know, why did you choose to be a board member? So I have you all on here, and there's some pictures missing, but so just I'm going to ask each board member to tell me your name and your why. Why are you here? Just like I just told you why I'm here, right? Because I love education, and I've been through the education system, and I believe that all students can learn. So, do I have a brave volunteer? Or I will pick?
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Joe Daly, and I am a board member because I've been in education pretty much my entire life. My mother was an elementary teacher. My father was a research scientist, so he had gone, he had a PhD, so he had a lot of education. I was a math teacher here in the Florida School District for 31 years, and then I did substitute teaching for another 4+ years after that. And at that point, we were in COVID, and it just sort of wasn't a lot of substitute, you know, possibilities. I could have a little bit, but I just decided I wanted to give back to the community in a different way. So I ran for school board and got on, and so it's just another way for me to be involved in the education. And the fact that I have a lot of institutional knowledge helps because I've been here for, you know, 36 years, 37 years.
How long have you been a board member?
This is my 3rd year.
This is your 3rd year. Great, thank you.
I'm Ryan Cheek, just got on as a board member. I'm here because I actually have a different take on education.
I think we're overeducated and America is under-capable. So we run a fairly sizable farm, and the kids that come to me to work have no life skills whatsoever. So I'm hoping that our education system, I come from a family, my dad was an animal science professor for his whole life, my sister has a doctorate degree. I was the only one that didn't go to a 4-year university, and I have a different take on education. I think we're in a rural area, and we need to teach more rural, hands-on activities for people who can grow up in this area and thrive in this area.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Bye, Michelle.
Thank you.
I'm Sandy Herring. I also am new to the board. And I'm here because I've always loved Philomath and the school district. My 2 children went through school here many moons ago. My husband and I lived here for 46 years in Philomath. And I have volunteered my whole entire adult life and even before that. And I advocate for kids through my experience with 4-H as a 4-H leader. And I saw this as a way to continue to advocate for kids. And I'm kind of like Ryan in respect of, I think we should be teaching kids like life skills too. Higher education isn't for everybody, so I want them to be able to learn a trade that interests them, that they can, support themselves on. And I just want to do good by our kids in this community.
And I would second what both of them said, because even though I was in math, which is one of the higher academic disciplines, I was also very strongly in support of the industrial arts, the
Right.
CTE stuff. We have things that not everybody needs to go to a 4-year
Right.
college, for sure.
Right, yep. Perfect.
I'll let Aaron go and then I'll go last.
Okay, sounds good. Eric?
So I'm Erin. I'm in my 3rd year on the school board, and I've lived in Philomath for over 20 years now. I've had 2 kids go through the whole way, and 2 who are in the midst of going through the district. And I am on the school board because I believe to the depths of my being that every child in our district can succeed, and we have to have people who are making decisions to support that. And I believe in creating an equitable and inclusive learning environment for all students. So that includes things like, if you have somebody who is very interested in AP courses, that they have that. And if you have somebody who wants to take CTE courses or needs to go through a GED program instead, whatever that means for that child, that we need to meet them where they are and help them succeed.
Well, thank you.
I'm Rick, and I've been on the board. I got elected in '03, but I took a 2-year break between 19 and 21. I got reelected I got elected in 2021. So I'm in my 3rd year, second time around. I've been involved in the district since the early 90s when I had kids in school. I started hanging around the district in the mid 70s when I was in high school in Corrales, because my girlfriend went to Philomath. So I've been around Philomath a long time. We moved out to Kings Valley in '83, and we're still in Kings Valley. So, but I'm very passionate. I've been over 30 years 4-H leader, kind of retired from that, but I'm still involved with the 4-H program, just not as a leader anymore. I got on the board when I seen that Philomath could stand to have their graduation requirements a little higher than what they were. I had a daughter go through the deaf school, and she was gonna have to go back for another term after her senior year because she wasn't at the 10th grade level in reading. And Philomath welcomed her to come down and walk in their graduation ceremony that year, and I was just livid because Philomath had standards that were lower than the deaf school. And that really aggravated me and got me to thinking that we need to change things in this district if we're gonna have a good district. And I'm a firm believer on hands-on. I've been in the timber industry for 45 years, different facets of it. Never worked in the woods or in a mill, but I've drove truck all my life, so hauled chips, hauled logs, that type of thing. So, but hands-on, you know, had to work on the truck myself, had to know how to weld, you know, and fix things, and so firm believer in the hands-on things. And there's some kids that they need the hands-on stuff, and other kids can't grasp it, you know, and the kids who can grasp the hands-on can't grasp the, you know, like the 4-year college type things.
Right.
And so we need to be, in this rural district, we need to be able to educate all the facets of the kids coming through there, whether they're in line for 4-year college, 2-year college, or trade school, or just leaving high school and going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to ask also the superintendent to tell me what your why is. Why did you decide to become a superintendent?
It was this weird thing in COVID that I, you know, you just, yes. You know, actually, after 14 years, after a teaching career and then 14 years at an ESD, this district could have easily told me when I applied for the middle school principal position, and it was district school improvement at that point in time, you've been away from kids too long. You don't know what you're talking about. We don't want you here. And so the fact that I got hired into that role to be back with kids again has been a lifetime dream. This is a position that, or this is a district I've not wanted to leave. And so was very open in the search for a superintendent to say, if I'm not the person for you, hire who you believe is going to work for you, and I'll stay. Sorry, you're doing what I'm doing, and be quite content. My idea or my goal is not to leave the district, just to climb and go. I have a belief in each and every student. So when we say all, it gets to that each and every. And so when we talk about, you know, 80% of our students will. It's kind of like, and who decides and how early do they decide who that 20% will be? So it's really about each and every to be able to get a quality educational experience that closes an achievement gap, that closes an opportunity gap. With the best instruction we can provide to students, both academically and social emotionally, to help them become their best into whatever their next step will be.
Thank you all. And then who do we have in the back? I just want to make sure I know who you
Hey, I'm
are.
Eric. I'm the principal here at this little lovely school,
Okay,
and
awesome,
so
great,
yeah.
welcome.
So I do you want me to share as well?
You can if you want, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure I knew who was in the
Yeah.
back of the room.
Yeah.
He's the new guy.
I'm the new guy, and I really, it's great for me just to even hear the board where they're coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I grew up, I attended a really small school for a while outside of the Dalles called Petersburg. It was a farming community, and when I was at the Dalles High School, I also got the chance to take tractor operation and learn how to drive a forklift. I worked in the cherry farms and the wheat farms, and it was so cool to see the things I was learning at high school to have a strong program. And actually, I could go work on some of those jobs, but also I just learned a lot of life skills in those things. My dad was a high school principal, and he always, shared after leaving the Dalles, he was out in Gaston and Dayton and those places, and he shared with me that like working in small districts is really special. The barbecue dinner tonight was, an example of that. But no, I mean, coming from a district like just Linus Pauling, where I was the new principal there was no shop, we had strong music programs and we had art programs and language, but we were missing the kids who needed the hands-on. We were missing the kids who really needed something that was going to connect them with school. And so I love all the things I'm hearing about how do we find and create opportunities for kids with STEM and with engineering, with hands-on, with sciences that are going to make kids love to go to school. And we can still do languages and arts and all those other things too that are really, I know, like a source of pride in Philomath. But that's just a little bit, one other thing I would say, I grew up with a brother with special needs, and so I have a special heart for the inclusion of kids who don't always fit in the sphere of success, we would say. So I like trying to help teachers, how do we expand our sphere of influence to include those kids? And that's something that I'm really passionate about. Well, I'm just really glad to be here.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
thank you, everyone. I hope you learned something new just with this little small activity, but, you know, everything I'm gonna do today has a purpose. Because it's important for you as board members to understand you're individuals, right? So you have different lived experiences, like we just heard, different perspectives, different viewpoints, which is great. And that's why you're elected and you're individuals, you're an individual person. I have different lived experiences as well, and perspectives and viewpoints, right? We all are going to, and when you're making decisions and deliberating, you need to hear everybody, you know, and that's kind of the role of the chair sometimes, to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, you're hearing everyone's perspective. Do it in a respectful manner, right? It's the agree to disagree kind of concept. It's okay for you to agree to disagree as long as you do it with mutual respect and, you know, and understand then how the process works as a board, right? The process as a board works that decisions are made as a quorum, right? And sometimes you may not agree with that quorum, and that's okay. You can agree to disagree, but you have to acknowledge that that's the process and, so to speak, support it. What I mean by support it is not like, yep, I'm all for it, because obviously if you voted against it, you're not for it, right? However, when you're out in the community, not just being like, yep, you can be transparent. I mean, your meetings are open to the public, so they'll see that maybe you voted against it if they ask you, right? It's just an example, hypothetical example. And you can say, I voted against it, but you know what? The process is as a quorum, and just kind of let them know, because just like you as a board member and you board members especially, nobody knows what a board member does, and neither did you before you ran for the board, until you actually start to experience it. The community also doesn't know what you do. So that's just kind of just to put into perspective. And so what you don't want to do is then go out and be like, well, I tried really hard, but so-and-so did this, and that can lead to a rabbit hole. So that's what I mean about supporting. It doesn't necessarily mean you support the decision, because clearly if you voted against it, you don't, right? So just to give you an example of why it's important to hear everybody's, and now hopefully when you are making those decisions, you just remember, and I did my job right by being up here training you that, remember, everybody has different lived experiences, hear them out, hear their side of their story and whatnot, and now you kind of know where that's coming from and not making assumptions, right? Because nobody likes assumptions. When you lead to that, then that creates potential conflict. And so it's important to be able to hear each other and kind of understand that we all are individuals, and that's what we like to say, individual board members versus board responsibilities.
That was one of the things that in my years I felt very, very positive about, is when there has been a difference of opinion in a vote that the board makes,
Yeah.
that there has, without question, never been a situation where somebody goes out and tries to sabotage that. It has always been the cleanest.
Yeah.
I have been able to voice my opinion. You know how I feel. We made a decision and we're moving on together. I've just felt really, really good.
Yeah.
About the board members' role and responsibility in that. It's really been great.
That's great. That's awesome. I love to hear that. But I'm just doing my job to say, so I'm not saying that's happening here. Full disclosure, I'm not saying it's happening here, but I
my
have
opportunity
my job
to say
is
thank you to this
But
group.
there you go. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Chime in as I go. Again, this is going to be a very interactive. All right, so now I want you to reflect. I'm going to ask you a question just on your own, individually reflect. I want to hear maybe from 2 volunteers or maybe 3. We'll kind of see. But I want you to reflect on your own, and either if you have paper, jot it down if you want, but just for a minute on your own. Why does the board matter? Why do you think the board matters? Just think on your own, reflect for a minute, and then I'll ask for a few to share. I told you I was going to put you to work.
I'd like to see you have a VHS player here. If anyone knows that.
Oh, wow, yeah. I haven't seen one of those in a while.
Or just DVD. Oh, it does have a VHS set.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Big old heavy TV.
I still have a VHS at home. I don't use it.
Yeah.
If I have to, it's a backup.
Yeah. Oh, man, I totally forgot about that when you had to rewind it.
Be kind.
Or it would break.
I remember 8-track.
Oh, yeah.
We used to have
Oh, yeah.
I grew up in a small town, Hood River. Well, now it's booming. Whenever I go back, I actually just went to visit my mom this weekend, and I was like, wow, it's just crazy how much it's grown. But when I was there, there was nothing. Orchards, so I relate with what Eric was saying.
Windsurfing
The
pretty much
orchard.
brought people to town.
There's a lot of windsurfing. It's very touristy, right? And as a kid, low-income household, that wasn't something that appealed. Yeah.
We were just there at the Aramaba Museum.
Oh, that museum's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, no, I love Hood River. Okay, so, sorry to segue there. But what were your thoughts? What came to your mind when you were reflecting on why does board matter? Yeah.
Jumped out immediately to me was the fact that if you have only one person in charge, then that person, everything can, you know, whether it be a superintendent or a CEO of a corporation or whatever else, if you don't have somebody to bounce ideas off of, to see what's going on, a single person can become a dictator, or it can just be so myopic that they don't see what they're doing wrong. And I think one of the main reasons that a board matters in any situation, I was on a credit union board for over 20 years with Susan, for that matter. and you need multiple people, multiple views, multiple perspectives to have a better chance of doing a better job.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. Anybody have anything to add to what was just said?
So right along with what Joe said, the board needs to be a diverse board, which I think we are. If all of us were in the same line of work, same business, same family, it's not the right board. But where we are very different people, different backgrounds, different careers, that's what makes equilibrium across the.
Different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. Anything else to add to what has been said? Yep.
Yeah, so the board's responsible and the matter behind it is keeping the vision of the district, and it's our responsibility to make sure that everything that we have purview over in the district is supporting that vision and moving toward the unified goal of the entire district.
Yeah.
It's important that overarching goal, because we're not here to micromanage. It's not our job to micromanage the district. That's the job for the people that, you know, the principals, vice principals, the teachers, the, you know, whatever. We're here to manage the district, that nebulous whole.
Great. I love it. I just was jotting down keywords so I could remember, but a couple things that, you know, caught my attention, multiple perspectives. And we're going to talk a lot about this throughout. I just wanted to hear from you, and then I'm going to give you the best practice, but I want to just, this is a great way for me to just understand your district. All of my presentations are customized to the specific district, because not every district's the same. Your community's different. I know this is a rural area. We mentioned that earlier, right? So it's really important, and that's also to just help me as well, and to help you too. But multiple perspectives, diverse, vision, which we're going to talk about later today, purview. And I loved hearing, thank you for saying that your job is not to micromanage. We're going to talk more about that. More so your role is to govern. You're the governance piece. And we'll talk about the difference between governance and management today as well. All right, how about this question? Why does board culture matter? What does that mean? What pops in your mind? Why does board culture matter?
Well, what we were talking about before, the idea, if you have a board that doesn't get along, it's always at loggerheads. If you have a toxic culture, you're not going to have a well-managed school or well-run school district. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways, I guess, you can interpret what board culture means, but that's sort of what my thought is that you have to be a group of people that are willing to work together and willing to, you know, accept, as you said earlier, accept decisions that you might not personally agree with, you know, if the group as a whole does.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also going to, I know there's some new board members, but I also am going to invite, this is my job as a facilitator, those who haven't spoke. I strongly encourage you to participate. Optional, but I do encourage it. Thank you so much. Anything to add from what was just said? Anything different? What did you think of?
Yeah, when it said board culture, at first I was like, what's board culture? But I'm feeling like it has to do with kind of not really the tone of the board, but the I don't know, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I would change culture to diversity.
It's okay.
That's what.
There are no
that's what
right or
I-
wrong answers.
Yeah.
I would take that, I would read that as why does board culture matter? I mean, to me, that means why does board diversity matter?
Right,
Okay.
That's what the culture means to me.
okay, that's good, I like that.
And then what were you saying? So it's not the tone.
Yeah, not really the tone, although it kind of is. I mean, diversity, we do need diversity. I just feel like the board culture, I mean, we're all on the same team. We're all on the team kid,
Yeah.
right? Students, that's
Yes.
our team.
Yes.
And if we have a healthy culture, we have a healthy approach to how we're governing that and keeping our goal in front of us and knowing what our focus is. And, you know, if we all keep that in mind, I do think that we have a healthy board culture and we can work together nicely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are no right or wrong answers, and I love what you said there, and that's a piece I'm going to talk about here in a moment, is how you work together. Board culture is how you work together, how you talk to each other. It's that mutual respect, right? It's okay, agree to disagree, but how are you, making those decisions? And sometimes you're going to have some uncomfortable, hard conversations. And I've had boards, tell me, I've worked for 3 years, but I've worked with a lot of districts all over Oregon. And I've had that question of like, it's hard to like have those conversations with the public seeing. I was like, it is, but that's your job as an elected official. I know you're a volunteer elected official and it can be difficult, but by not having those hard conversations, you're making a disservice to your students, like you just said, and students is your focus. And it can be easier said than done, right? But thank you for saying that about the focus of students. And you're right, it's about how you work together, how you communicate with each other. You're a team, right? So, thank you all of you for chiming in. You're all on the right path there. So basically, when it comes to board culture, your work matters, okay? Your board work matters. And it starts with you at the individual level, right? That's why your different perspectives, it's important to have that diverse, right? Like you mentioned, Ryan, as well. And your board work, right, is important too. How you work together as a team, how you collaborate also with the superintendent as well. And if you can't, work together, it's a causal chain, right? So if you have a good, healthy board culture, right, how you work together, communicate, you understand the policies, you understand those laws that sometimes that you have to abide by and whatnot. But if you were to have a bad board culture, it impacts the organizational culture. But it starts with you. You're at the top, and then it impacts the organizational culture. And what I mean by that, your relationship with the superintendent, right? And then from there, it impacts classroom instruction, and then ultimately students and student achievement. I like to think of it, and what I tell boards, it's like a domino effect, and it starts with you at the individual level. And I'm not just saying this because there's research rooted in this. I've seen the research. We've even partnered with somebody that also, how many of you have heard of the Lighthouse Study? Okay, great. And that's great, but there's been a lot of research since then as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, but I've also seen it done. When there isn't a positive board culture, it impacts all of this, the domino effect. Okay, and students is at the center. Right. So a lot of you, as you mentioned, teamwork, and you're absolutely right. Your work is collaborative. You not only collaborate with each other, right? You also collaborate with the superintendent and with the community. And part of that community is the students, and we'll get to that here in a moment. But really, this is just a definition that our board development team came up with based on research. But what I want you to pay attention to is really just the bold letters. And essentially, I'll leave this up here. I can also share these slides afterwards as well. A lot of my slides are images, but sometimes I get requested, can I have the slides? So I'm happy to share them. But basically what it's saying is that in order to have that collaborative governance and to have effective partnerships with each other, the superintendent, the community, there needs to be trust and respect. Because without that, you will not be able to have those partnerships. You will not be able to collaborate. And you have to have that shared focus, like you just mentioned, on students, student achievements, high expectations for your students too. And I love what you all have said in different ways, that each student, you meet them where they're at, right? Not everybody is gonna do a 4-year college education or 2 years, so you need to be able to make sure your students are successful in whatever career path they decide to pursue, right? And then it's done through your collective responsibility, accountability, and support, which we'll talk about what those mean here in a bit as well. Just a raise of hands, do you know who your students are here? Below it, right? I want to make sure I pronounce that right. All of my sisters and siblings, except for myself, I'm a duck, but they all went to Beavers, and so I was like, I want to make sure I pronounce it right, below it. Do you know who your students are here at Below It School District? Just raise a hand.
In the sense that they're just are, yes, but I'm not exactly sure what you're asking.
And that's okay. That's okay. Let me do this one. How could you know who your students are? Or those of you who raised your hands first, let's ask them. How do you know who your students are?
Well, if we want to go just by numbers, we do have our school report that comes out that shows us our demographics at a very basic level.
Okay.
But also, I have kids in the schools still, so I've been out and about. Maybe the younger ones I don't know as well anymore, but being actively engaged with a school specifically or events, you know, doing 4-H. I think you all know a lot of the 4-H kids, or sports or different things, like, you know, just being very engaged.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also listening to the teachers, listening to the administrators, hearing the stories that they know, because they're always going to know more. In fact, they probably know more about us as parents than we even recognize about ourselves, because your kids tell their teachers everything. Yeah, so just that engagement component and being a listener and being observant and spending time inside the halls if you can. Yeah.
Great.
But I think those demographics really only show you statistics, and they're not really telling you who your students are and why they're doing the things that they do or having trouble or succeeding or whatever that might be.
Thank you for saying that. Is that kind of where you were going at? Okay.
Mine's totally different.
Yeah, go for it.
Students, so I guess I don't have, as I look at the school board, I don't know if the desire is the right word, I don't have the desire to know all the students. My desire is our students are the future of the country, the community, future leaders, for future employees, voters. So I look at it as a more of a machine than an individual thing. The machine has to function as so what I would say, your students are the future of the community.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
So I look at it totally different.
Okay.
If we have individual connections, that's great, but like you say, the teachers get to know the students, really. The IAs and the support staff get to know the students really well. The principals probably a little less so, superintendent a little less so. But in terms of, like you say, just knowing them as people, but knowing them as, like you say, future members of the community and the country, that's where, you know, our focus is education. Put out the best product we can, and the best product is a well-educated, well-rounded student that is achieving at their highest potential.
You know, it's similar to kind of, so the reason, and I'll get to it here in a moment, but it is important to know who your students are, and I'll explain what that looks like for your role as a board, right? Because you're absolutely right what some of you are saying, you know, that's the district, the superintendent needs to know who they are, right? They're implementing and doing all the things at the district level. But there is a layer for you to also know who your students are. And another question that I ask sometimes is, just like you need to know who your community is, students are a part of that community. And so the decisions you are making are impacting students. The research shows it, but I've seen it done as well. It may not seem like it, but a decision you make impacts a student almost the very next day. And so it's important for you when you're looking at making decisions, looking at policies, that you have the information and you know who your students are, so that you can utilize that perspective too. Just like you have your own lived experiences and perspectives, it's important to know who the students are, what are their needs. More so, what are their needs, but at that high level, right? You're absolutely right, you don't want to get into the weeds. But let me just talk about kind of within your role, what does that look like? So oftentimes for boards, I haven't looked at your agendas, I tried to look at some, but do you have a section where you get data reports from the superintendent?
Yeah, we did.
Frequently,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, right, okay. Which is great, but I always tell boards, how is that tied to the district vision that you as a board, or the district goals that you as a board set? Because that is something, and that's that high level, and I'll show more examples of that. But I tell boards, whenever you're looking at reports, making sure it ties to your role, which is the vision, right? What do you want, where do you want students to be in those next 2 to 3 years or 4 years, however long the strategic plan is of the district? That's how it is your role, and you should be looking at data. You're not looking at individual data of like the students, right? That's getting into the weeds, and that's the role of the superintendent, but more so just holistically, who are your students? And so what I mean by that is, some of you mentioned like demographics, so racial, socioeconomic diversity, academics, state test scores is one that, you know, always sometimes you will see the reports on, because you want to see how students are testing in math, or because there's, you know, benchmarks like third grade reading level is an indicator of student achievement. What about health and wellness? How are your students doing social, emotionally, and physically? How about program enrollment and participation? What programs are there? I heard CTE. Is there programs for agriculture? Is there, right? So what kind of programs of enrollment or participation, and what students are participating in that? That's what I mean, and that's still high level. Not looking at individual, but looking just at a high level. Attendance rates. What do your attendance rates look like? And then obviously, this is one that everyone likes to pay attention to, the graduation rates, right? So those are just some types of data samples. And these are kind of the reflection questions that I ask boards, that when they do get reports, that high level data reports, and it should be high level, like samples that I just showed, I'm not gonna ask you to answer these, but this is just some questions, food for thought for you next time you see data of what you can think of within your role. So when you're looking at data, do you notice or see any patterns in data, including gaps? What are you noticing? Are there certain populations or subgroups of students that are graduating at lower rates, attending school at lower rates than others, and asking why? Why, right? Why is that happening? What's the correlation there? Is there a correlation there? How is the district performing within different grade levels? You know, you said, I have an idea of how, but I don't know about the littles anymore, right? So how are they performing at different grade levels is really important too. And then does the data have a correlation with the district vision, mission, goals, and priorities? I put all this up because there's so many. I don't know what terminology is used here. Which one do you use? Is it mission, vision, and goals, or? Yeah, okay. So mission, vision, and goals. Sometimes it's called priorities. I like to tell boards, I use priorities a lot just because I like to think of it like a mini vision statement. A goal is like a mini vision statement. And that is the role of the board, to set it collaboratively, and we'll talk more about that. But this is just to explain kind of why I asked that question, because it is important for you to know who your students are to make those informed decisions within your role though, right? So making sure it's high level data and tied to this. This is the big one. How is it tied to the mission and goals? And does the data tell the board how district goals are progressing? Right? Because there could be those goals somewhere on the website, but how do you know really that things are happening and progressing? And this is just, yes.
I was just gonna say, I'll throw in an example for, Joe, I don't know if you stayed beyond the breakfast
Not
during
long.
in-service week. Most of our teachers were in a session that was about instructional strategies, and the woman who presented was the talented and gifted specialist from the Department of Ed. And she talked about all kids, but one of the things that she referenced is we often forget about the need to differentiate or look at our instruction at rate and level for our kids that are high end, because we assume they're gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers of times that you can look at national and international data that talks about the suicide rate for gifted kids, and or the ones that will get to a place where they finally get challenged in a university or graduate school setting, and they don't know how to deal with how do I deal with all of a sudden I don't know something and it doesn't come easily to me.
Yeah.
And so that was an aha for a lot of people, to be able to say, we can't be safe anymore to just assume that our high-end learners are just going to be fine, and we don't have to think about them. So that was just an example from what our teachers just recently done.
Absolutely, yeah. And so it's a balance, and that's why it's all students, right? It's all students, and it's going to look different in every district, and so that's why it's important to know who your students are. This is just a scenario of how that might show up. For you to just kind of put into perspective of how this would maybe show up. Not that it's happened here, but this is just what I've experienced. So during a recent presentation by the superintendent, a board member questioned the lack of detail in the disaggregated student results for each district goal. While the data provides a good global view of student success in the district, the board member wanted to see the data broken down by individual classrooms in each school so they can judge individual teacher and school effectiveness. So is this the role of the board?
No,
Right, good answer. Why?
because it doesn't have to do with, it has to do too much with the day-to-day stuff as opposed to just the overview of the district and running the district.
Also, depending on the class size, it's actually illegal to request that information, especially in a public venue. Breaks FERPA.
Yep, there's FERPA, there's HIPAA laws, yep, depending on what data that is that's requested, right? Yeah. And I kind of said that at the beginning, right? Again, it's important to look at data and ask those questions that are within your role as a board, which is oversight, big picture, systems thinking, right? So why data? It's kind of what you, segueing what you said earlier about like data, numbers don't always tell you everything. I strongly agree. Numbers are great, but they don't tell you sometimes the full story or the full picture. And so that's why, you know, I tell boards quantitative versus qualitative data. They're both equally important, in my opinion. And a good example, like during the pandemic, some boards were telling me, like, well, data's paused, you know, we don't have anything to look at. And I was like, okay, what about qualitative data? What are parents saying? What are teachers saying? What are your students saying right now? That's all important information to understand your students' needs right now, right? And I'm not saying quantitative isn't important, but I'm saying sometimes there are going to be the scenarios, and that was a unique situation. But there is still that qualitative data. So it helps identify needs. It helps identify gaps. It helps identify strengths as well, right? And areas of growth. Or as you just said, a great example, areas that you maybe didn't think of before, right? It helps for future planning, for the strategic plan, for the vision, the district goals. For the budget, you want to make sure that the resources, that the goals are aligned somewhere in the budget, right? Your role as a board isn't to look at every single line item of the budget, but you do, and you could ask, where in the budget are these district goals appearing? And usually that's in the narrative, the summary narrative that the budget officer, reads. And then it helps with policy making and decision making to help you make informed decisions. So I have this statement up here. What do you think of this statement? All students can learn.
Absolutely.
I see thumbs up, great.
Not every student can learn in the same way, but all students can learn.
Yeah, and we've had already that great discussion of like meeting students where they're at, right? Earlier in that definition, I said setting high expectations, setting expectations too for what they want, right? You know, like you mentioned, Ryan, right? If they want to go into the agriculture field or, you know, whatever they want to do, just making sure that you address that, their needs.
I think all students want to learn if you want, when they're young, they all want to learn. The ones that don't want to learn as they get older is because they weren't being taught the right way.
Something didn't bring them in, something didn't grab them.
As you're talking about data and test scores, I was just thinking back to high school, and they came out with those, when you circle in the little boxes, and I thought those were stupid, so we all.
The Scantrons? I hated
I
those
was the
growing up,
zigzag guy,
yeah.
my friends were, we didn't read the questions, I went to A, B, C, D, and I'd make a zigzag pattern, somebody else was a circle, we never took the test, I thought it was stupid, so we didn't do it.
Okay, yeah.
Well, and that's like all testing, right? It's only as valid as the input, right?
This is a belief, and what I'm hearing in this room right now is that you do believe this, which is great. Kudos to you and your board, that's fantastic. And we all want what's best for students, right? That's why you're on the board, that's why I'm here, because I want what's best for students. I went as a Latina living in a low-income household in the river, I went through some inequities. My siblings did too. I still hear it. And I want to make sure that, you know, there's a good education, public education for students. But sometimes, you know, even though you know, I've had some situations where it's like, well, of course we believe this, of course we believe this. But this is where it can show up. This is just a scenario, an example, just to put again into perspective. During a recent board meeting, a board member rejected the proposed vision statement because it included the phrase, all means all. They indicated that it was impossible for each student to achieve at a high level. Many students do not have the support at home necessary for them to be successful, said the board member. It is an impossible goal and should not be approved by the board. What are your thoughts?
This slide was shared at the conference this summer, and there was some interesting feedback.
Oh, did you go to our summer conference? Yeah, Yeah. You went to the roles and responsibilities workshop?
I think this was the pre-conference day.
Yep, with Steve Kelly. That's my director. Yep. What were your, so let's hear it, see maybe from somebody else. What pops into your mind here? What are your thoughts with this?
I had a friend that was homeschooled, had no support at home, decided he wanted to do something, went to college at, we're gonna say middle school, with the community college. And I hung out with him in the learning center. I did my homework while he got tutored. So support at home is an excuse, I think. I think that's just a scapegoat. Because there's plenty of opportunity for support. Now, I realize some homes are very horrible homes for kids. But if the kids know there's a safe place to go and get help, my friends and I, we worked after school. We did all our homework in the library during the, I can't remember what the class period was called, but even our lunch break stuff, we did our homework, so we went home to work. So we never had homework.
Certain situations can make it harder to be successful. But if you have a school district, board, administrators, teachers, support staff that are all have the goal of every student should be able to achieve at the highest level that they can achieve, then, I mean, I think every student, as you just said, can learn. And so there may be impediments for some more than others, and we just have to work that much harder to help try to help those students try to meet them where they are, as you said.
I like what you said, Ryan, about an excuse, right? Because this is basically saying, you know, like blaming external factors, right? Oh, if only those students had, you know, parents that were more involved. Oh, if only those students had X, Y, and Z, right? That's blaming the external factors. So, thank you for sharing that. And did you have anything to add?
Oh, the summer conference, the person who spoke up said that person shouldn't have run for the school board. And initially that makes sense, right? If you don't believe in students, you shouldn't run for the school board. But the reality of it was, like, that would be a school board member who just hasn't had enough exposure to the reality of the world, which is that so many students are going to achieve despite not having support at home. And I think the numbers are much higher than people want to believe, because it's heartbreaking. Like, I would say there are probably more students achieving despite not having support at home than there are students achieving with, like, amazing support at home. Unfortunately, it's the way of the world. And it's not always intentional from the point of the parents. I had a parent who had to work nights to support our household, so that was it. Like, it wasn't that she didn't want to be supportive. She was being supported by, you know, giving us a good house, you know, and paying for food. And so I think that was, and I kind of chimed in and said, maybe that's the opportunity for the rest of the board to be like, come along with us, let us teach you the ways, and maybe change the mind of an adult who holds a lot of power in that community as a school board member to recognize that they have an ability to make an impact on this and change that statement. And not all high achievement means the same thing for every student.
Right, what does that mean, right? How do you define success?
We know we have kids in our district where high achievement for them in school is that their heart is still beating at the end of the year. And we have to remember that. And that is a high achievement for many students in our district, that they are just still on this planet with us, and thank goodness they are, and I'm so grateful. And some students, it's gonna be that they go to an Ivy League school and that's their high achievement. And for some students, it's gonna be, hey, I got a summertime job, I got to buy myself new school clothes this year. Like, it looks different for everyone. And that's why teachers and everyone who works in this district amaze me, so much all the time.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna have 20 kids in their class in a small size classroom, and every single one of those kids is gonna have a different version of what that is.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. No, go ahead.
This statement, just breaking down the statement, is the problem I have with society. One of the reasons I run a school board, everybody has a reason they can't do anything. My employees are about this too. We didn't get it done, you have to figure it out. Well, you just go do it. That's how you succeed in life. You don't make up an excuse. Sometimes you screw up and say, there's decisions you make, oh man, that was horrible. And you go fix it. You don't, this is somebody that gave up on life, is what I read that is. Oh, it's too hard, they just give up.
The adult, you mean
Yeah,
The board
statement-
member, the
the
board
statement
member
right
is
there.
giving up.
Yeah.
They're making an excuse.
Right.
That's the participation trophy. Nobody has to do anything. Nobody should work harder. Everybody should be equal, and we don't have to worry about it.
The word impossible is what really, it's like, anything is possible.
Well, the little quotations is just to me that's just everybody wants to give up too easy. Nobody just goes and does it.
But I also believe all this starts at a younger stage too. I mean, we can't just all of a sudden when they're in high school say, you know what, it doesn't matter what's happening at home, you do you. Let's teach them from early on, you can do this, you can do this, you can do
I was a
this.
high school teacher and I always said the most important grade in in the school district is first grade.
Yeah.
maybe kindergarten.
I would agree.
Yeah, exactly.
They
You
don't
know,
get a
give
good
them
start.
those tools early on and make them believe in themselves early on rather than, man, I can't do this.
All right, so I'm gonna move us along. I know the
Yeah,
scenarios
sorry.
are fun, and we have a lot more, which
Okay.
I don't think we're gonna get to today, but that's okay, because I can come back, or we can figure that out later, but, I'm gonna just move us along. So, thank you everybody for sharing, and again, everybody's gonna have different perspectives and opinions on it, but the moral of it, or not the moral, but like the point that I just wanna get across is that, which I believe is happening here, is that you're here for students first. And for all students, each and every student, right? And you understand that they are gonna have different needs, and that you just wanna ensure that every student is addressed, right, and supported. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to just the research and practices. So I talked a little bit about the Lighthouse study, and this is just a snapshot of a bunch of research, but I wanted to just highlight that since then, this is really where it started, the research around how board actions and behaviors have a direct correlation and impact to student achievement. But since then, there's been a lot of other research as well. We're going to be focusing on this researcher named Tom Alsbury. We have actually partnered with him to revamp our board self-evaluation tool, which is a great tool to, and it's been revamped now for almost 2 years, I will say. And it's a great tool. Boards, you know, we used to have this other tool that only had 5 standards, and boards are like, we're missing stuff, like community engagement and this and that. So we partnered with Tom Alsbury, which is now on 12 standards, 84 questions. It's done anonymously. It's a great report because you take it individually, and it's anonymous, but then if you do it with us, you have facilitated discussion, and that's where we can have an honest, open discussion around, okay, what are the strengths and areas of growth for the board? Just like you evaluate, and you should evaluate the superintendent every year, and hold the system accountable that way, you as a board also have to hold your performance accountable. And one way to do that is with the board self-evaluation. Whether you want to use our tool or not, just making sure you can have a conversation around, all right, what worked? How was our work over the year? You know, what are areas of strength? What are areas of growth? What do we want to do in our work sessions for the rest of the year? Kind of things like that. Helps with planning as well. So Tom Alsbury, this is his book, Improving School Board Effectiveness, with Phil Gore as well. And it's a balanced governance approach. We're going to talk about that. We talked about collaborative governance. Another one is balanced governance, which is Tom Alsbury's concept, and we're going to talk more about it. The 12 standards that we're going to walk through now, which we're probably not going to get to all of them, because I have until 7 o'clock, which is fine. But we're going to start it and see how far we can get. And this is the part where I'm going to do a lot more presentational, but I also encourage you to chime in if needed. And we do have a parking lot as well. So essentially, these are the standards that if you can exemplify these as a board, you're a high-performing board. You're impacting student achievement. So what does that look like? We're going to find out right now. So standard 1, vision-directed planning, which we've already talked about some of these things. We might go through some of them a little bit quicker than others. But basically, your role for vision-directed planning, you do have a role in that as a board. Boards set the strategic direction. So the vision, whether you call it district goals, whether you call it priorities, essentially it's you deciding where do we want our students to be in the next 2 to 3 years. You do it collaboratively though, with the superintendent. When I help boards with the strategic planning process, I tell them it needs to be a collaborative process. Look at data, who are your students, get the people at the table to tell you what the data is showing. So whether that's teachers, parents, community members, and it's a very collaborative process. Students, I've facilitated this kind of process before, and it's great. Boards get to work with a bunch of different stakeholders to identify those big overarching needs, or what you like to call district goals, vision, whatever you call it here at Philomath School District. But that is your role, that it gets done. Done collaboratively, but your role as a board is to ensure that that direction is set. On the flip side, the superintendent creates the strategic plan, right? So that's more details, measurable goals, strategies for how that vision is going to get done, right? So you're setting the direction. Once that's set, superintendent takes that direction and creates and implements either with the strategic plan, a lot of different strategies with her cabinet team or staff leaders, folks at the district level, how that's going to be done. So really it's this process. And so your role here, setting the vision, right, with stakeholder input. The planning piece is then the superintendent's role, how it's going to get done. The management is what we like to call that. Your governance, this is a management. However, alignment, that's your role. Making sure, so once the plan is done, how does it align with the vision? And if it doesn't, then you can maybe say, hey, I don't see where this is laid out here, right? You shouldn't tell the superintendent like, oh, nope, you should do this. You should hire X amount, you should do this and this and this. That's not what alignment means. It's just making sure once that direction is set, that it's somewhere in here and you see it, right? That's what we mean about your role with alignment. And then monitoring is the last step that a lot of times gets missed. And that's the piece that I talked already for a while around measuring the progress of that vision, right? How do you measure that? And that's one tool that we do with boards is setting up a monitoring plan. So it's great to hear reports from the superintendent, which the superintendent will get to decide what information tied to the strategic plan. She wants to give updates. Susan will give updates right during the board meetings. But during work sessions, we recommend boards have what's called a monitoring session. Before you have those monitoring sessions, which we recommend 3 quarterly, it's creating a monitoring plan where the board gets to decide one piece of data or information, doesn't have to always be data or numbers, information that's going to allow them throughout the school year see progress with the vision or the district goals or your mission. So, and that's going to allow you to know, what progress is being made. So in summary, for this standard 1, is the board engaging, with community staff, and then the board ensures that the vision is the foundation of the mission and strategic goals that direct board policy making, planning, resource allocation, and activities, which I mentioned earlier, right? Once you've set those goals, how is that aligned in the strategic plan, but how is it also aligned in the budget? The goals, not the strategic plan, the goals. Questions, comments?
Actually, I did have one question. What was
Absolutely.
the frequency that you recommended for the monitoring sessions?
Quarterly.
Quarterly?
At least quarterly, yeah.
Okay. I misheard what you said, so thank
And
you.
the monitoring plan, I have a sample of that I can share, that I'm actually gonna be doing with the board soon. You do it collaboratively with the superintendent because there's certain information and data that you won't receive for a while, right? Mm-hmm. And also be aware that, progress takes time, but at least start somewhere, right? What's the baseline data or that baseline information, right? It can even sometimes be, I had a board that they just decided there was a new program that was going to be implemented and they just wanted to see what's happening, are you meeting with folks, or just updates. So it can really just depend on the board with the superintendent get to kind of create that monitoring plan and then figure out when the monitoring sessions take place, which we recommend quarterly. This one, community engagement. This is of high interest. This is of high interest, and as you all know, I'm sure you're aware, during, this has been more of a high interest, and there's been a lot of community engagement. What's your role within it? We're gonna talk about that. So when it comes to community engagement, and I like to tell boards, how are you meaningfully engaging with the community? So community engagement, in my opinion, is not a one-time thing, check a box. It's not just doing a town hall. We actually, for our summer board conference, had Steve Constantino, if you went last year to our summer board conference, and he talked a lot about meaningful community engagement, and he even said town halls are not meaningful community engagement. They can work though, and I have done them, or, you know, community engagement listening sessions. I have done them, I have facilitated them, but it's not necessarily meaningful.
Well, I think more of your community engagement stuff is just being in the community and talking to the people that are in the community. I mean, I get more,
Yeah.
you know, like when you go to the hardware store or the
Yep.
grocery store or something like that, you know, you get a lot of information in those settings.
Yeah.
That more, I think, valuable information than you do at a listening session like that. That's
Yeah.
just my personal opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, the other popular avenue is public comment, right? Which you have a policy, we do recommend you have a policy on that. However, that can create, in my opinion, isn't also meaningful sometimes, because you as a board, we recommend just listen, right? Just listen, and that can be frustrating on both ends. I've heard it, you know, the board being like, oh, we want to chime in and we can't, we're supposed to just listen, right? And then the community sometimes is expressing during public comment maybe some really important messages or concerns, and the board is just nodding heads, right? And the community's like, why aren't they responding? And just like I mentioned earlier at the beginning, just like nobody knows what a board member does, and neither did you, the community also doesn't know sometimes your roles and responsibilities, right? And so for public comment, a way to kind of mitigate that is I tell boards, the chair should read a script right before opening public comment. Sometimes that's in your administrative regulations procedure for public comment. If you have an AR attached to it, that's an AR. What?
You just said, way to go, Rick.
Rick?
We do that.
You do that? Yep.
Yeah, we try to let them know before we start public comment that we're not gonna engage in a conversation. We'll
Right.
listen to what you have to say,
Yeah.
but we're not gonna engage in and we're not gonna have questions or anything
Yeah.
unless once in a great while we might, you know, on something, but most of the time we're just listening and they can say what they want as long as they're very respectful in doing it,
Mhm.
you know. We really haven't had that problem in
Yeah.
the past.
Yeah.
A lot of the other boards throughout the state that get in some really ugly situations.
Yeah.
We haven't had that here in this district because most of the people are very respectful and when they come up and present to the board at the public comment session.
Do you know why we recommend to just listen?
Well, you don't want to get into the weeds and get into an argument and, you know, it just kind of get out of the purview of what the board is supposed to be doing.
Well, I feel like that becomes very personal if it's a one-on-one rather than a united board. You know what I mean? If we engage one-on-one
Yes,
on public comment.
absolutely.
You know, not to say that people shouldn't be able to approach us.
Right,
I mean, they should.
right.
You know, that's just as important as anything else.
Well, public comment might prompt us to bring something up to the next board meeting or whatever,
Right.
because this is a concern and we've discussed it. You know, then it's different, but on an initial public comment, you just
Right.
wanna listen and you don't wanna make rush judgments, rush to comment.
Yeah,
Most time, public comment is
Emotional.
emotional and normally a complaint about something. If you comment, you provoke them.
Right.
yeah, you're all, I agree with all of you, and we tell boards, you know, exactly, you don't wanna create, you respond to one, you're gonna have to respond to all of them, right? If you give an extra minute to one, you have to give an extra minute to another, right? So you have to make sure you follow those procedures and processes. And, but sometimes the community, and I know here maybe it's not needed, but what I've told other boards where it can become a potential conflict or they're not sure how to mitigate it, is just explaining the why. You know, we need to listen, like you just all said right now, we need to listen to everyone as in, you know, as a whole. We can't just respond to one individual. We need to hear the whole community, right, as much as possible, right? The community as a whole, and then the board has to, you know, deliberate together. And oftentimes, you're right, like you just said, it's complaints, and that's not the purview of the board. Usually when there's a public comment, it can be public complaints, but I'll get to that later. But usually when it comes to public comment, it's gonna fall under the purview of the superintendent, like 80 to 90% of the time, right? But there are gonna be situations where there's areas that you could maybe put, or the chair and the superintendent can put it as maybe an agenda item to discuss and deliberate, right? If there is like something you're seeing like a pattern, right? And something that could fall under the purview of the board, then you can put it up for deliberation and discussion.
Most of the time, it's public comment. If there's much said, it's the fact that we steer them to the superintendent, you know, get a hold of the superintendent and talk with her and see if you can work it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of our good examples last year was a couple of community members that were talking about library acquisition. And before it got to a book ban conversation, we put on the next agenda the library media group being able to talk about how materials are selected and what the review process is. And it wasn't about this is why we're keeping this book or why we're banning this book or why we're doing whatever. It was this is our process of how we acquire, this is a process if somebody wishes to challenge, this is how we do, and we never heard any more after that. And so it was a nice listen to what people have to say, put it on the agenda for the next month to be able to have just an informational session and carry it forward, and it was perfect.
Yeah. Well, then I think so many times, people just want to know they're being heard. You know, I think we need to be, you know, we need to be open to that. You know, people just want to be heard. They don't even always have a problem that they want fixed. They want to be heard.
That's where a listening session could be helpful.
Yes.
You know, where you have,
Yes.
they talk, and you're just saying, okay, because I know Rick did one or two last year with like in the schools for the teachers, as opposed to the whole community, but still, you know, it's like you're listening to people who tell you stuff. You can't necessarily make any decisions. But you can at least let them know they're being heard.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the ones that I did and led, they were just very structured, right? And have just, you know, ask questions and keep it on like, you know, a focus and whatnot. But I want to go back to what you were saying about when you're out in the community, right? What's your role as a board when a constituent, a community member, especially in small communities? I'm very acknowledgeable that it's different in rural communities versus small, big, large, even medium-sized districts. What's your role when somebody does approach you out in the community with a concern, potentially a complaint? You know, what's your role? I'm asking you because I'm going to give you my advice, but I'm asking you first so I can hear.
What I've done, you know, through the years, if somebody comes to me, and it's usually just kind of a relaxing conversation to start with, and then it kind of gets a little more involved. And if it gets to the point to where they're complaining about something or want to complain about something, I just send them back to board policy. You know, there's a complaint policy. If you're not happy with what's going on, go to the complaint policy, read it, follow the steps in it, and, you know, it basically says go to the lowest level. You can't work it out, then it escalates up. And, you know, I've had a lot of people come to me wanting an issue being brought to the board right away when, you know, when they go back and start at the level they're supposed to be at. It's usually settled at that level or maybe the next level up, and we never hear about it as a board. So I mean, that's what I do in the community is if people are doing that, I just send them back to start over again and you know, go that route.
Yeah.
Most of also.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
I was just thinking, as I said earlier, most of those things are micromanaging things. It's
Yeah.
not our job to take
Yeah.
care of most of the time.
Yeah.
Right, right. But it is, but I do agree in what you said, right? You can listen, absolutely listen to your constituents and, you know, empathize with them if you want and whatnot. And then what I tell boards is use it as a learning moment for them. You know, explain the process like you're saying, right? Say, oh my God, you know, in your opinion, you can express, you know, some stuff, but you just cannot speak on behalf of the board.
Right.
Well, yeah,
Right.
that's,
Cannot speak on behalf of the board. And I know a lot of you know that, but I just, you know, this is a board training, I wanna make sure I just emphasize that, unless you have the authority to do so, right? But yeah, use it as I tell boards, absolutely you can listen to your constituents, and you should. You should listen to them, you can empathize with them. But then use it as a learning moment, explain to them maybe how boards work, right? You know, and say that's, you know, like you just said, direct them to the process, direct them to the policy. You don't want, will say, OSBA are risk adverse, and you want to make sure, you know, that I give you the recommendations and best practices and whatnot. You want to be careful you don't say like, go file a complaint, right? But guide them to the process, absolutely, right?
I don't tell them to file a complaint, but
Right,
I do tell them, you know, and I'll listen most of the time, well, probably all the time,
yeah,
of what they got to talk about.
Absolutely.
And I just tell them, hey, I'm one of 5.
perfect,
It's, you know,
Perfect.
I can't control anything. I'm one of 5 people who
perfect,
oversee this district.
yeah,
And, you know, if we want to act on it, we'll act on it as 5. And if there's a majority, then, you know, it's fine. If not, then, you know, it just, it doesn't go away, but it just doesn't have the clout that it does with 3 or more
yeah,
that are in favor of it. And so that's kind of where I go with it, is that, you know, I just tell them, hey, I can't do anything about it, you know,
yeah.
because
yeah.
even though I'm the chair, I can't, you know, I can't tell everybody, oh, this is what we're gonna do. You know, I'd be a
Right.
dictator then, I wouldn't be a chair, so.
Good, I'm glad you know that, yeah. No, that's perfect. That's exactly what you know, that's a great example of a best practice that boards should do, individual boards when they're approached by community members. Yeah,
And I'll just say, since I am close personal friends, as I'm sure Joe and maybe others are, with some of the teachers in the district,
mm-hmm.
I will let them know if we're having a conversation that is me being their friend. I'm
Yeah.
very clear and I'm very explicit, and I will say this has nothing to do with my role on the school board.
Yeah.
This is me who has been your friend for 17 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna listen to you talk. Before I do that,
Yeah.
my last thing I'll say as a school board member is go to the district page, read through the policy. I'll still direct them to that information, and then I say, okay, this is your friend listening now, and I will be taking no action on anything you say. I cannot use this to affect any decisions that may eventually happen, but I'm your friend and I'm gonna listen to you, because there are people in this district, like I said, I've been very close friends with for a very long time, and I'm not going to kick them out if they're having a rough time at work.
Right.
Because it might be something that I've advised them on before I was a school board member.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm very, very careful, and I reiterate it multiple times, and I make sure that they're aware
Yeah.
and that they're agreeing with me, but it's a difficult one.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you wear many hats, right?
I'm more of a provoker, so I get people, I'm a processor, a lot of people are reactors. So sometimes, I get people, you get these people complaining, you get the groups that are strong together. I'll just say, so what did you volunteer to help do, to fix the problem? And then people just shut up and walk away. And together, they're all big and tough, and then you ask them, so you have all these issues, so did you help, are you gonna go volunteer help? Well, no. So I just walk away. I'm like, good for you. And so I provoke
flip
people.
it. Yeah. Which is what I'm doing right now, right? I keep flipping it back to you, right? I'm like, well, what do you think it means? You're like, what do you mean? How do we know who our students will? What do you think it means? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great example. That's awesome. Thank you. So yeah, community engagement, is very complex. Just a brief overview, and it's systemic. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not a one-time thing, fix the box. It has layers, right? And it can look very different ways. What I tell boards is have this type of conversation about what does community engagement mean, right? What does that look like? And that's what I call just assessing the situation. I'll sometimes go to boards if they want to have a conversation and they're like, we really want to do more community engagement, meaningful community engagement. Like, where do we start? And I was like, well, assess your situation and have a conversation with the board and the superintendent, right? Identify why and the level of community engagement. Is it a listening session? Is it just having a conversation about how the process is going with public comment, if that's an area of concern, right? Or, you know, what we just had right now, a conversation of how to, in smaller, you know, rural communities, when you're approached at the grocery store, or approached at your jobs, right? Or at the school, you know, you're visible, and everybody, especially in small communities, know who the school board is, and they'll go to you for answers, right? And it's important for you to know that you're not always the first stop, right? Like we just discussed. And then understand your role as a board, which we just discussed right now, which is great, versus the superintendent, right? Because the superintendent publicly leads the district. And so that's why oftentimes a lot of those situations and concerns are going to fall under the purview of the superintendent. And again, it's that relationship piece too, which I don't think we're going to get to, but that's okay, because I think it's important to have these conversations, because that's, you know, what this space is for. Lastly, just another best practice of how I believe is a great way to maybe have meaningful engagement is tied to the monitoring plan that we discussed, right? When the board gets together for a monitoring session, they've already done a monitoring plan, they've identified what data information, they get together for a monitoring session, their staff, their students, their parents, you're looking at just, you know, an update on that information or data that you want to check progress on, tied to the goals. After that monitoring session, you know, you're gonna have some information on, okay, great, this is where things are happening, or, you know, we identified maybe another gap or whatnot, right? Creating then at the end of the monitoring station what we like to call a community engagement plan. Simple form, you decide the talking points, you know, based on what you heard in terms of progress. Each board member gets assigned a place and date where they're gonna share these talking points. So you've agreed that these are the talking points you're gonna be sharing out. And then you will debrief your commitments, you know, how did it go? Who did you share it with? Was it, you know, maybe your 4-H, right? Like parents, or just whatever that may be, friends even. At the next board meeting though, you will debrief how that went when you share these talking points. If you get questions asked, and you have to agree to this, if you get questions asked, you know, you can say, we're gonna debrief it on X, because you've already agreed to prior, before sharing those talking points with the community, that you're gonna debrief it. So you can let them know, we're gonna debrief it. Our meetings are open to the public, you know.
One of the things we're going through right now that kind of fits into this, I think, is the forestry / cross-country, because we had what they call downing forest. It's a small plot of trees that had sustained a lot of wind damage last winter.
Yeah.
So we had to come in and basically clear cut it. And it was the cross-country track inside of the forestry. And so we got a lot of talk from both sides, forestry and cross-country. And now we've actually been very, I think as a district, very proactive on, you know, helping with both programs, and, you know, would fit into something like this to where, you know, we could have we've had the talking points and things, you know, when we've had discussions with different groups. So, but I think as the board chair, as a board member, I think it's went extremely well, because the community was really up in arms to start with.
Yeah.
But since they've seen what the district, first off, what happened,
Right.
why it happened,
Right.
what the district is doing to mitigate it,
Yes.
and, you know, how we're looking forward, the vision for the future, has squashed a lot of the complaints and got people to actually realize, okay, well, maybe they're not the bad guy. So,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just like you should be tracking the progress, the community wants to know too, what's happening at the district.
Right.
Where are those district goals? Some might not even know where they are or what they are, right? So, yeah, thank you for sharing. So just to summarize, right, it's a reciprocal advocacy process, and it's a collaborative process as well. What are we doing with time? We're pretty good, 15 minutes. I know folks want to take a break, probably.
It's just these
Well, these chairs,
These chairs aren't
the
comfortable.
chairs really aren't comfortable.
No,
Oh, my
Yes.
God.
Principal, but the chairs are not comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
They probably
Chairs are designed to keep the meeting going.
And the chairs are so
Oh,
tiny.
God.
I know, I was like, usually I stand though, like I'm sitting down because I want to be at that eye level, right? Because the chairs are so tiny. That's funny. No worries. Okay, so standard 3, effective leadership. I mean, essentially what we've been understanding your roles and responsibilities, what we're doing today. That's being an effective leader, right? What we're doing today, we've been doing that. When it comes to board culture, I forgot to mention this, and this is something that I talk about effective leadership too, is you as a board, set the example for others and for students. You're modeling the way for students, so to speak, as a leader. That's actually the slogan for our annual convention, model the way for student success. So that's just, effective leadership. But it's also, understanding your roles and responsibilities, which we've already given lots of examples today, but it's really that governance versus management, which I've heard loud and clear that you understand the difference between that your role as a board is that governance piece. It's that what, right? Identifying that what the student needs, the district goals. The management is the superintendent's role. It's that how, right? Once that's identified and you set the direction of the goals for the district, how it gets done, superintendent, right? It's that management piece. And you don't want to do this, right? You don't want to manage and get into the weeds.
Not unless I get paid.
Yeah.
No!
Exactly.
Those boards that are
When we're on
getting
the
into this,
payroll,
I'm
we
like,
can do
you
that.
really want to do that? No, you don't. You
That's
don't
coming up,
want to
Joe.
do that.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. You hire the superintendent to do this, right? So you need to trust and have respect, right? And trust that the superintendent is going to get that work done that you have set. Right? Thank you.
And if she doesn't, I'm just kidding.
No, that's, my mantra has become, there are no secrets in my life because I'm the public record. And that's just the way it works, so.
Right. Well, are you doing so let's go back to your role. Do you have a superintendent, I'm gonna flip it now. Do you have a superintendent evaluation?
Yes.
I don't know.
Every year?
Every year?
Well, those two wouldn't know because they
That's
just
right.
came
We
on.
just
so-
started.
but
However,
we
let's
just-
do it a learning moment, right?
We
It's
just
important for
got
them to
done
know.
with the superintendent evaluation.
Yeah.
just
This
2
year
months
Vince
ago.
did
Target feedback
the
survey?
targeted feedback
Oh,
survey, so we
great,
did
yeah, I
that this
love
year.
that.
So
Awesome.
wait a minute, so did we hear the results?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so that's one way for
And
you
we
to
can
make
share 'em
sure.
again.
But to go back to your example, right, that's one way to make sure that it's getting done. And that is your role of governance, right? To hire the superintendent,
Right.
to make sure you're holding the system accountable. It's called accountability, which is a standard in here as well. Not this piece, right? The management. Okay, right. And this is just a slide to show, district goals tied to that student achievement, right? We all want our students to succeed. What that looks like afterwards, like we discussed, can look many different ways, right? After they've graduated and their career that they choose. So essentially, effective leadership practices and supports leadership, establishes focused direction and expectations, collaboration, right? We talked about all of this, alignment of authority and responsibility. It's just knowing your role and responsibility, but also your authority and limits, right? We talked a lot about that already, individual versus board responsibility. And you have policy on that too, by the way. Yeah. And this is a great segue because we just talked about accountability, which is another important standard, which is, there's the superintendent evaluation. I don't know if you use our workbook, but this is a toolbook. You don't have to, but just as long as you as a board agree to a process, and you have to do that in open session, agree to that process, superintendent has to be aware of it. So that's just a snapshot of that. I talked about that, also how you have to hold each other accountable, right? You as a board and your performance, just like you hold the superintendents. This is just a snapshot of the board self-evaluation tool that we use. So you get the report, you get all the pool report, how everybody responded to each, it's anonymous, but you get to see how everybody responded to all of the 84 questions tied to each of these standards that we're walking through right now. And that's just a snapshot. But what's valuable about that is you have an honest conversation, but afterwards you should develop a professional development plan. So sometimes there can be confusion as board goals versus district goals. When I talk about board goals, I'm talking about your board professional development goals, right? What are you going to commit to? I like to call them board commitments instead of board goals to sometimes help differentiate the difference between the district goals, because sometimes all the terminology can just get convoluted, and I've heard so many different versions. So I've told boards, a great way to kind of, if you are struggling with that, is just say board commitments. What are you committed to? Board professionally development to tied to the goals too, right? To ensure, that you're being that you're performing well. So that's that professional development plan. It can look many different ways. I've done formal ones where boards decide after they do the board self-evaluation, or even sometimes just a conversation. It doesn't have to be the tool, it's up to you, but we do have that tool if you want it. Identify what you're going to do throughout the year. It can be a formal process, you adopt it so it holds that accountability, right? And it has action steps, or it can simply be, I've seen boards that just do like bullet points. This is what we're going to do. We're going to commit to doing work sessions around X, Y, and Z. We're going to commit to doing a board self-evaluation every year, or every other year. We're going to commit to doing a monitoring plan. We're going to commit to whatever that may be. That's for you to decide. But I just wanted to let you know it can be informal or formal as well. So it's just holding high expectations. It's, again, that strategic direction, the monitoring piece too, right? Holding accountable to superintendent, but also holding yourselves accountable as well. Questions, comments? And this one, I won't spend too much because we covered a lot of that at the beginning, how to use data for continuous improvement and accountability. So I'm just gonna go to the summary. So board uses meaningful quality data, and I would even say quantitative and qualitative data. Identifies those areas, right, the needs of your students to set those priorities or to set those goals, and then monitors those goals.
You get that data from Susan frequently.
Yep. So we talked about this a bit, Standard 6, cultural responsiveness. What does that mean? Ensuring, one way to think of it is just ensuring that you're meeting the students where they're at, right? I heard the word diversity a lot, and I appreciate that word getting thrown out because it's also, understanding and making sure all of your students feel welcome. And again, knowing who your students are as well, in order to be sure that you recognize the culture diversity looks many different ways. It can be social, it can be economic, religious, geographical, right? It can be your ethnic, your gender identification, students with special needs. I heard that be called out earlier too. Understanding diversity and applying those perspectives when you are making decisions. That's essentially what it means to be culturally responsive, is that you understand that who your students are, and applying that when you are making those decisions. Right? And the board supports effective community engagement as well.
Like we have a connection to a local Native American tribe that's part of what we do, and so that's something that we've been focusing on as well.
That's great. That's great.
I left here just a minute ago, sorry to chime in, but I was talking to Marina, she's our district translator, letting us know we have a new family, and they're emerging bilingual family, and that tomorrow can meet at 10:30 to make sure they have a smooth transition in, and so it's like just having somebody at the district that's doing that. His family happens to be coming from Mexico, so it's just really cool that she has my cell phone, I can connect with her. We also have a family advocate, so it's just coming in new and seeing those things in place in this district is really great.
Yeah. Something that resonated with me because I'm always learning too, folks. I'm always doing continuous learning. I'm improving my PowerPoints all the time. I'm like, oh man, when I first started, I feel so bad for those boards. Because it has completely changed. And we had board development artwork too, and we want to revamp and give you the best research and practices. But it reminds me of Steve Constantino, that researcher that we brought in. And he talked about sometimes it's as simple as the signage, the colors, just simple things like that, making families and students feel welcome, right? I think one example that resonated with me when I listened to his presentation was there's all these signs of like, do not enter, be careful, this and that, it should be more welcoming and, things like that. So that's essentially what cultural responsiveness responsiveness means. Thoughts, comments? Oh, we're actually going pretty well. We're already on number 7. Because throughout we've been already discussing a lot of these standards. So I'm not going to repeat myself and be, unless you want me to highlight, or if I missed a piece like I just did right now. So standard 7, culture and climate, which we talked about already. Essentially, it's how do you work together? How do you collaborate, right? It's that collaborative governance piece. Trust and respect, right? Your shared focus on high expectations for students. Balanced governance. So here, essentially, and this is Tom Osbury's, the researcher that I've been mentioning so many times, and he's actually coming. He's coming to our convention. So we've been talking about him, right? He ramped this and this and that. So as a team, I'm also the program planner for our events. And so we're bringing him so that, we keep mentioning who this person is. Well, now you get to see who this person is, and he's going to talk about the work he's done with school boards across the nation. So anywho, balanced governance. Essentially what this is saying is that you as a board don't want to be on either side of these continuums. You don't want to be a disengaged rubber stamp board where you're just, looking at policies and like, yep, we call those nodding heads. Making sure that you are having deliberations, hearing each individual's perspectives and opinions, right? And they come up a lot of different ways too, whether you're having marathon meetings. I've actually had a board who said they do their meetings in like 30 minutes. I was like, whoa, you must be a rubber stamp board. And, so, and that's what I told them. I was like, okay, so are you delivering? So, but on the opposite side, which you're not doing here, and I've already heard it, you don't want to be overreaching, micromanaging, right? Or getting into the weeds of the district side. But you do want to be informed and that oversight piece. So what does that look like? And a really good example that I always like to give boards, especially even tying it to community engagement, if there's rumblings out in the community, again, you can hear them and whatnot, making sure that that information gets back to the superintendent, right? Keeping each other informed. That's that relationship piece and why it's important that you have that trust and respect. So as a board member, if you do hear rumblings, the superintendent might know, but you don't want to assume that. Just let Susan know, right? And Susan, I'm going to ask you, would you like that?
Oh yeah, that's, we all know that social media hits everybody before anything else. So, so yeah, there are times that I don't know. And it's great that people call, and even if I can say, yep, I know about it, I could provide maybe a little bit more insight, or if I don't know about it.
We don't want her to be blindsided.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's the more communication, the better.
Great, and I ask you because you have to set those expectations.
Yep.
The other thing too, on the flip side, if you know something's happening that the board needs to be aware of, that's gonna get trickled down into the community, because the board doesn't want to be caught off guard either, right?
Absolutely.
Nobody likes surprises, right? And that's part of maintaining that healthy relationship, is setting those clear expectations of how you are gonna share and keep each other informed.
What'd you say,
right?
I said, unless it's a surprise party.
And keep each other informed, so you would let the board know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a text, right, to let everybody know, or, whatever form of communication.
Yeah, as long as I can stay ahead of social media and the grocery store, I'm good.
I'll just throw out there, there's been several times that I'll hear something and I'll go to Susan with it, and she's like, oh, well, thanks for the heads up. I mean, there's a lot of things that she doesn't hear that we might hear, and I don't know how the rest of the board members are. Well, Joe and Aaron, especially since they've been on the board, with communicating with Susan. But I would recommend any of the board members that even think that, it's something that Susan should be aware of, just call her or text her or something, say, hey, are you aware of this? And, she might already be, she may not be, it may be nothing when it works its way through the process, but at least she's aware that there's something out there. And she's been real good about, reciprocating to the board in the past that, on different things, so.
Yeah, no, that's great. But I ask that because it's important to set those expectations, especially when you have new board members and for them to understand what those expectations are. And that's part of building that partnership that I talked about earlier, right? That effective partnership is having these conversations and not assuming, right? And so, thank you, I appreciate that. Somebody, did you have your hands raised or no?
Not on purpose.
Oh, okay, no worries, no worries. But
Can I
again,
ask
it's
you a
just
question
keeping,
about that?
yeah.
So if we know something's going on, we'll come to you, Susan, but do we also go to the board chair with it? What is our obligation there? I mean,
Probably
I'm-
Susan.
I'm
first.
just
Well,
asking.
I guess it depends on what it is.
yeah, well, I don't know.
Great
Who
question.
knows?
Generally, I would say Susan first, and then she can tell Rick if she
Sure.
thinks it's necessary.
That's what I wondered. I mean, is our go-to Susan and then, I don't know.
I guess
Or even if
I
it came
guess
to
I
both
just-
of us.
So
Okay,
I
I'm just
just,
trying to
Even if
figure
it
it
came to
out.
both of us as being not sure, then it's about being able to say, if it's asking for resource or if it's in the weeds,
Mhm.
then, you know, Rick's gonna say, tag you're it. And if it's a response that is something specific to the board, you know, then Rick can say, you know, we can have the conversation that says, yep, that's Rick's to be able to respond to, or to, we've had a couple of situations over the years, but, just Rick has called or emailed and said, hey, I got this, what do we wanna, you know, what's our course of action, or I've told this person this,
Right.
and we can work that through together, so.
Well, I just was double checking
No, I
because I
think
know
that's
there's,
smart.
I mean,
Yep.
I know there's rules that
Yeah.
Ryan and I aren't totally familiar with yet
absolutely.
about hierarchy and all that stuff, so
Yeah.
I just,
I appreciate you bringing that up.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely, because
But-
that is a question that I get asked a lot, and this is what I tell boards. You have to have that conversation together with the superintendent and set those expectations.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can look like needing to be in an operating agreement, which is essentially just a way to prioritize what you need to agree to on. So sometimes it can be like simply as like, who do we go to? Like, you know,
Right.
even for an email correspondence too, like when
Yeah, I
you
was gonna
get,
say, we could
Yep.
email Susan and the board and get it all done at once.
yeah,
Well,
so,
you're pretty safe to, Susan and I both, or
Right.
whoever the board chair is,
Yep.
at this
Yep.
point in time it's me. But just the two of us, and not the board or
Yeah.
anything, just to Susan and I. That way then we're both in the loop, and then we can talk, you know, between the two of us and kind of the best course of action to
The board is-
whatever.
So, and the reason for that, I'm gonna try and real quickly, is because the superintendent and the board chair set the agenda.
Sure,
Yeah.
and I get that, but I also wonder if the rest of the board necessarily should be out of the loop.
Well-
Well,
Not making a
I love
decision,
this conversation.
not making a decision, but just as far
You're
as
asking
being
good questions.
informed.
Well, I won't say out of the loop, because once you send it to Susan and I usually let Susan inform the rest of the board, because then there's no
Okay.
open meetings law
Yeah.
things, because it's coming from Susan
Okay,
and not the board chair.
see, that's what I'm trying to clear
And
up.
that's where I blind copy
Yep.
all my
It's
messages
still
to the
open meetings
board.
law, just so you know, even if it's coming from Susan, it's still open meetings law.
But that, just like she just said, the blind copy, so
Yeah,
that
blind
nobody knows who's getting what.
Well, you
Well,
can't,
okay,
but you can't respond to each other is the reason that I do
Right.
that.
yes.
So it
One
keeps us
direction
out
information.
of, you know,
We're
the
talking
famous
Online
thing
forum
of
or
hitting
whatever.
reply all or
You
something
don't
like
hit
that.
reply
Then-
all.
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
hit reply all ever, is what
Yeah.
we tell boards.
Yeah.
I've gotten that question about BCCing, and my recommendation is just the board should know what their role is, right? I don't know if I agree with the BCC. I think
Okay.
it's better to do, so the board knows that they're getting it and not feeling left in the dark.
Well, I typically put greetings board member.
But they need to know to not hit reply all.
Yeah, and that's why I do it
Right,
and hit
yeah.
it with greetings.
No, I
board
totally get
members.
it, and I
Yeah.
had some boards who told me too, like, oh, I didn't realize that, like, you can do it, but me as a risk adverse would just say, you know, I
Yes.
recommend
How do
just,
we know that everybody knows? Yeah.
right, exactly, and you don't want that to start of like, hey, how come I didn't get that email or this and that, right? So it's just a great, but you as a board need to agree to, and that's what I say, that's why operating agreements are important, setting those expectations, having that conversation like you're having now, doing these trainings, so that you are all in agreement of what that process is.
Yeah, and we've
Right.
also said that on the board already know that when we get something from Susan,
Yeah.
that's a BCC, we know all the board's getting it, but she's doing that to be safe so that we're not violating public meetings.
And that's fine too,
Right.
if you agree to that and you agree that, you know, you're not gonna feel left out or this and that, whatnot, yes.
And then the one differentiator, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, is if someone comes to you with a complaint against the superintendent, you would only direct that to Rick.
Yes,
Yeah.
Understood.
yes, yes.
Because understood.
Yeah,
Great
that-
point.
And
That's
also
good to
direct them to
clarify.
policy, should they
Yes.
not,
Understood.
perhaps
Great
not have followed
point.
it, they
Yep.
accidentally emailed the actual thing to the wrong person, whatever that might be, then it just would go to the board chair.
Understood.
No, this is great, because this is what I call a board that's being proactive. Set your system up before you need it. You do not wanna then have a situation and be like, what's our process and whatnot, so this is great, and I appreciate, you asking those questions.
And I do have some proposed pieces of information that we've never gotten to that, or I don't recall us getting to the level of kind of the board superintendent operating agreements that are those types of things exactly. And so I have something that I can share either with us tonight or with us when we meet next. But tonight it would be more, if I share it, it's gonna be about take it home and look at it and tear apart kind of thing. You know, rather than fine toothing it tonight, but it was just something to look at to say, would this be helpful or would this not? So
Right.
it's very timely. Very
And we
timely.
have some samples too, I'm happy to look at yours and
Awesome,
share
thank you.
our samples as well. So it's 7:00, a little bit over 7:00, but I didn't wanna stop, my job as a facilitator is to make sure and read the room, because this is a great conversation and really important questions that you were asking. But I'm gonna stop here, because I know you have other things to do, and I was told just an hour and a half. Unless you want me to keep going till 7:30, or, you know, you do have a full service agreement, so you can figure out when the next date, and if you want me to come back, talk about that, talk about board operating agreements, whatever other topics, maybe if you had a topic that came to mind that you're really interested in, monitoring plan, whatever that may be, kind of decide what's next.
First thing you said you could get us the PowerPoint, could you get that maybe to Susan and she can disseminate
Absolutely,
it? And that way we can look at the rest of it and see if there's anything else that jumps
Sure.
out of this is.
Well, I
Sure.
think, don't we have you scheduled for, you know, didn't we get a 3-hour block?
Yeah, we just
We
have to-
didn't
Yeah.
schedule
We
the
just have to
second one
decide
though,
when the
you just
other
have
hour
to,
and a half
yeah,
is.
yes,
That's what I'm
absolutely,
saying. We
yes,
got you scheduled for 3 hours, we're taking an hour and a half tonight,
yes,
and then an hour and a half
Correct.
the next time, whenever that is,
correct,
so.
yep,
We'll have
Absolutely.
another hour and a half
Yeah.
with you
Mhm.
to finish this
Yeah.
and do
any
whatever
other
else we need to
topics,
do.
yeah, absolutely.
How close to the end did we get?
You were
Is
pretty
this
close.
number 7?
Yeah, this is number 7, but I mean, I have a whole section on operating agreements. I'm happy to help facilitate that if that's something that's of interest, and, you know, whatever the other topics are, and we can talk the board chair and the superintendent to kind of decide. But what I would say is book a date sooner than later, because we get booked, and our annual convention's coming up. Actually, let me finish by sharing.
November 9th through 11th.
Let
Drum roll.
me, I want to just share this piece real quick.
Big Bear Adventures.
Let me end with this, because I think it's important, and I did bring a resource for you all. But let me just end, come on. Is it there?
I was teaching a couple of classes.
Why is it not working?
VHSs that I could not find on
Oh.
DVD. CD-ROM, but I had to just do it with the VHS.
So, oh, hold on. What's going on?
Since then, I found that different ways to digitize things, like you can take a vinyl out and digitize it, do the right,
Show.
send it into a computer,
There we go.
and digitize it.
I'll end with just this right here. Okay, so just some tools and resources for you, or food for thought. Our website, if you haven't looked at it, I definitely recommend you to poke around, especially, and we did revamp it recently. Your OSBA login, all of you as members of OSBA, as a board member, get access to your own login. If you don't have access, let me know and I'll connect you with the person behind the scenes who can do all that. But there's a lot of resources in there, and one of them is this basic roles and responsibilities, if you haven't seen it, workbook. Full disclosure though, it is long, and as a board development, like I said, we're continuously looking at how to improve our systems, our trainings. We are working on revamping this very soon, but it has a lot of great information still. Some of it might be a little outdated, but just full disclosure, once we get that new one, we will share it. It will more than likely live in that portal of your login. So yeah, poke around our website. You know, I'm sure you get lots of emails, but we do have our ORED news. It's a great way to just know what's happening locally and then also statewide and nationally, just so you can kind of see if there's anything. Or we also share like our events or training opportunities or webinars, which are free for you as a member, and those are usually monthly. Also, there's Board Chair Cafe. Are you a part of that, Rick?
Yeah.
Board Chair Cafe. We also have.
Coming up on the 12th.
Yep, and it's just basically a way for all the board chairs to get together, and vice chairs, get together, discuss concerns, issues, and that's led by Vince Adams, who is board development specialist, and he no longer anymore, but he was a Corvallis School District board member.
But he's from Corvallis.
He's from Corvallis, yes, exactly.
So he's a local.
He's a local, yeah, y'all know Vince, I know. So what, sorry? Vince what?
Well, I can talk to Rick about it.
Oh, the board chair cafe?
Yeah, I didn't get.
You, so Vince.
Because I'm the vice chair, so.
Yeah, I'll tell, if you want, you can email me and then I'll connect you with Vince and make sure he sends you, he has to send you a link. Okay. So it's not just it's not a webinar, the Chair Cafe, it's a Zoom meeting. Because we want to make it very just casual, kind of like right now, super casual. We also have one for admin professionals as well, and that's led by Jen Nelson, who also was a board secretary, so she has that one as well. She's our senior administrative assistant.
I think Michelle participates in those.
Perfect, and there's like a listserv for them as well. Convention, that's our next big event. It is November 9th through 11th. 9th is the pre-conference, which is where that Tom Osbury researcher that I mentioned today several times is gonna be there, and we're gonna have the administrative professional workshop. The conference is Friday and Saturday all day. And then that's where we have our keynote speakers and 60 workshops.
Still up at the Marriott?
It's up at the Marriott, yeah. Yep. And very close to releasing the registrations information and stuff. So that will come out in the ORED news. And that's why it's important to look at those. This is the whole board development team, some of the folks that I mentioned, right? There's Vince, there's me, there's Jen, who leads that administrative professional connection cafe. Kristen Miles is another board development specialist, and then Steve Kelly is the director that led your workshop at the summer board, and he's actually retiring.
He's retiring.
It's like next week or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I actually attended his last ever
conference
session,
yep.
And he was like, well, since I'm almost out of here, I'm gonna be really honest today. And he was.
That's awesome.
It was fantastic.
That's great. Now, yeah, love Steve Kelly. He will be missed. But excited for him. But yeah, that's everything. Again, I will connect with the chair and superintendent to figure out what date is best, or if you want to discuss a date, tonight, so that we can put it in the books.
Yeah, we'll probably check calendars tonight. And then
great.
That's perfect. That would be smart.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Because yeah, it gets busy.
Okay.
That's a good busy. Well, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for your time and for everything you do for students. I hope you found it valuable, and we'll see you soon.
Yes.
Figure out when the next date is.
Very safely on your way back.
Oh, thank you. It's still lit outside, so that's nice.
Just watch for deer.
Yeah, I saw those signs. All right, thank you so much. No, I'm just gonna go to the restroom.
I think that's all right to stand up.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's nice to see you in person. Use the restroom and I'll sit down.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Yeah, I think we're all gonna take a couple minute stretch and water break. I also did turn the air conditioner down.
What?
I think I just in a dress.
Yeah.
I asked him if he had a light.
I rolled my pants.
My wife don't like it, it's cold.
So, like Cheech and Chong, just
Right.
roll
Billows
it out.
Remember my parents used to smoke in the car?
And we're
To where the windows were that,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
filmy.
yeah.
And we all smelled like cigarette smoke when we got out of the car.
Yeah, but
Didn't think a thing of it.
We didn't notice it. It's like
Didn't think
in
a
the
thing of
bar.
it.
You know, we go to the bar all the time.
to wear,
No big
not so
deal.
much anymore,
But when they
restriction, I'm supposed to
quit,
wear
allowing
skirts
smoking in
and
the bar,
hose and
if you
heels
got
and
around somebody who
blouses.
smoked.
Yes, I know, you smell like an ashtray and you cough like a, yeah.
And it
That was
exists to this
terrible.
day. Thermostats are usually set
But,
colder
Yeah,
in office
you know,
buildings.
back
So I
when,
sent
you know, like I
that,
said,
article
my
to
mom,
our,
or my
when I was
stepdad,
working
my
in person.
dad, my
Our
stepmom,
facilities manager.
smoked in a
and
car,
he
Oh,
said,
yeah.
you know, little
You're not
sedan,
being
you know,
fired.
Toyota, windows rolled up in the middle of the winter.
Oh, yeah.
And I smoked
My-
my straight, you know, was
Oh,
that.
no filter.
And like cases, like all the.
IKEA is always a little bit chilly.
Little chilly, so you're kind of
And
like.
disorienting.
Yeah.
Girls do have those
Yeah, it's almost too.
Well, and look at NASCAR.
Also,
It's
bright lights, there's a lot of thought into that.
Is there enough?
Target,
And
like,
then
I
other
just-
signs.
I
and
feel
then
used to be
other
Winston,
ways
yeah.
of doing
It's
it.
not like
Championship.
it's so
Well,
bright.
Winston is out of town with a cigarette. Can't be
So I'm
associated with that.
a lifelong nurse.
Why not, man? That's the roots.
I just
You
said,
know,
I'd rather
what's the
research
problem
than
with
about
it?
the
Yes.
temperatures. I do not work.
I just don't see it.
I also no longer do any work in
Non-athletic
retail
sports
design
center
or interior
events.
design.
Yeah.
IKEA has hired psychologists to help them figure out
Oh,
what works
yeah.
for them to maximize.
But I found
the
out
amount
something
of
interesting in the last week. Sammy's drove a NASCAR.
Maximize the
Uh-huh.
files.
Yeah. You remember when I went to race car driving
Do you
school?
know what NASCAR stands for?
Tell me, it's a joke, right?
Sit at the table so you can write on things,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
We're gonna be lower, I have to say, it's okay.
Do we have a high table?
Probably not.
If I'm going down to the
Hey, can't we
end
go-
down here.
Is the cafeteria closed?
We
No.
have to keep,
The video.
the video.
Oh,
Streaming portion of the
right,
meeting.
right.
So,
Yeah, I was gonna say, oh, we could go in
yeah.
here.
Rick said the same thing.
That's what I
I
suggested.
know, right?
We have,
Here you go. Here you
Well,
go.
if you want bigger chairs, put bigger chairs in.
We'll live.
Next year, sixth grade.
Oh,
That was Amy's first.
I know.
Oh,
Are we ready?
Is it getting colder in here? Or is it
It's because you came and
It's
sat
just
in the jet stream.
Okay, thank you.
It's a direct
But I was
jet
getting
stream.
colder over there too.
Can it be
I
just
had
turned off?
goosebumps on my ankle bones.
Yeah, it's getting warm in here now.
Were you cold, sir?
Rick, before I forget, because I'm thinking of all the thank yous, who's barbecue?
Linda Dallas.
Okay, thank you.
Aww.
That was very nice.
He's like, if there's something going on at Bonds today, or a barbecue got hijacked. What was that? It's like, a barbecue got hijacked, they went and watched it.
The Dallases used to have the Little Warriors preschool come to their farm every year
Oh,
to
yeah.
see their cows and see some of their, or not cows, their horses, and see some of their smaller animals.
When they were out on Highway 34 or?
Out on Kings Valley.
Oh, on Kings
Yeah.
Valley, okay. So they
I
went
don't
down
know
on
if
the
they
LC Highway there just, yeah, but they got a long. I know.
Well, this, since, Alexander's almost 20, this was when he was in preschool, when he was 2.5, 3 years old, so, I mean, it's been a while. Yeah, they would, the preschool would get to go out every year, so I went out 5, 6 years, got to go do that, and it was really fun.
They've probably been out there for 30 years or more.
I can't remember when they.
I graduated high school 23 years ago, and they were out there.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's
You
been
know
a
who
while.
graduated 23 years ago?
Isn't that sad?
Really?
OMG.
Class of 2000.
Class of 1980.
77.
76.
My brother's the same age too.
76 strong.
So you're old.
I was in that play.
Yeah, I had to remind my brother to go sign up for Medicare here because his birthday was in August.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a
Do it.
great thing. Right.
Okay,
Let's get started.
get going on this, planning calendar, since it's right on top of the list there.
Off the list, bottom of the stack.
Yep.
Got it.
So it basically tells us what we should be doing on different months of the year. Of what, what's coming up and what we need to do. Susan, do you know of any changes that need to be made to it?
No, because we did a lot of updates,
Last year.
last year.
Yeah.
We won't have student survey information, for September where it says draft student survey information, but we will be coming back with some, information of some things that we used at the high school. There's a, it's an aptitude and interest survey, more around, CTE-based kinds of programs, but it's about where your interests and aptitude lies, and something called U Science, Y-O-U. And would like to bring back some of that information, as well as some high school survey information that the high school did last year, but it's not gonna be right in September.
We can leave this on here and just kind of backfill with that information.
Yeah.
Well, and is that something that needs to be on the school board planning calendar, or is that something that needs to be on your plan?
It's on mine, but the reason that that was put on here was really about being able to, it was really student survey information and what might the board want to know
Okay,
in a
Just-
student
just
survey
an
piece of
update to the
information.
board.
Yep,
okay.
Yeah.
So just put.
So we
some-
also should strike the years on there though, because
yeah,
that's.
but nothing, I mean, we did a lot of overhaul last year.
Yeah, okay, and I'm gonna show my frustration with this.
Okay.
Kings Valley, and they're wanting to get together with them as a board. I realize they came up with the excuse that they're trying to get more members and, da-da-da. I'm just really frustrated with the fact that they just don't move ahead with it and wanna visit with us. It gives me the sense that, maybe we just not that interested in meeting with you.
So I'll reach out to them.
Yeah, because I'm getting really frustrated at this. We've reached out 4 times to them. You know, I reached out 3 times, you reached out once. Pretty soon, I'm just gonna say, well, you know, you guys are not on the good list, and we're just gonna continue to do things the way we're gonna do them. You may not like it.
So I will
Yeah.
do that.
Because there's some things coming up that we have to be the oversight for that school.
Yep.
And, you know, we try to work together with them, and if they don't wanna work together with us, I'm just frustrated enough that we'll just take the bull by the horns and away we go.
So what, just for an example, just real briefly, so what do we govern for them? What do we do for them that they may not like?
Well, there's a myriad of things. You know, when it comes to enforcing the charter, there's different things that we can be real hard about it, or we can be pretty lax about it.
Okay,
Just different things like that.
Okay.
And there's really nothing that we control,
okay,
you know, other than the fact of how severe we do things, you know, like how, you know, whether we really hold it right to the letter, or if we're graceful and, you know, while you're late with your report that was supposed to be here last month, you need to get it to us.
okay.
And, you know, things like that. It's just, you know, the level of how we deal with
Gotcha.
what does or doesn't get done.
Gotcha.
I will say that the working relationships between the staffs
Yeah,
is good. I mean, that side of it, but I mean, I understand the board needs to be able to have that dialogue back and forth, and that's critical.
well, we've had it in the last couple of years,
Right,
but
we have.
I'm just a little frustrated this year that they haven't responded.
Do they have their own board?
Yes, they do.
Yes.
And their board is not an elected board, it's an appointed board.
Okay,
Right now, they say they have, what do they want, two more board members, or 3?
2 or 3, I can't remember
And if
which.
they get 3, they've got an even number, because there's 3 on there now. Sally Lammers, Diana Barnhart, and Beth Hoinaki. So there's 3 of them that are on there that's been there.
Mhm.
One just left, that's been a year and a half ago now, I think,
Right,
Billy
yeah.
Marr left.
Yep.
And I don't remember if they ever had a 5th person.
I don't think they did.
I
They
think
haven't
they just
for a
had
while.
4.
Yeah.
But the scary part of that is whether you're doing a tie vote.
exactly.
Because it's always
Right.
good, you've always got that chance of having a tie
Yeah,
vote,
yeah,
and they don't have anybody to break the tie,
Mhm.
you know, that I know of. I don't think it's in the charter.
It isn't.
So their board is appointed by who?
Their board is appointed by them.
Okay.
They
Them
have,
meaning their faculty or?
no, their board. Their board appoints board members.
Okay,
So,
Yeah.
so whoever's on the board then appoints
decides to,
whoever.
They
Ross
have-
gets to be on the board.
You know, and this puts a whole new meaning to the good old boys club, you know?
Uh-huh.
So,
That's what I was
and that's the way that I've always looked at it, right or wrong, indifferent or whatever, but if you have, and I'll just be blunt with it, if you have different ideas that they don't like,
Right,
you probably are not gonna get on their board.
right. No diversity there.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
Thank you.
you know, that's just the way that is, so, yeah, there's some things written in the charter, review the KBCS annual report in January.
But it also is in February. Is there some reason it's twice?
No, we moved it to February because they wanted it taken out, and we just didn't pull it out of the January.
Oh, so cross off the one in January?
Yep.
Okay, so they want it in February, okay.
And we also, just so you know, in that January, you'll see the district financial audit, that includes the KBCS audit as well, because the district is their fiscal sponsor.
But they do their own audit.
They do their own
They
audit.
do their own
we
audit, but
review
they're,
their
since
audit.
we're the sponsor district, it
Yeah.
coincides with
Yeah.
ours.
Okay.
So, and if you have any questions on anything that's on here, just,
Sure.
speak up.
Should they do their own financial audit?
Yes.
They hire it out.
They
too.
hire-
It's
they
it's
hire
more-
it out.
It always
Actually,
has to
it's
be a
the same
third
outfit
party.
that's doing
Thank
ours
you.
now, isn't it, or is it
Yes,
different? Okay.
it was this last year. I
Yeah,
think.
this last year,
It's
it was
the
the
same
same one.
Gotcha.
And they adopt their own budget. You know, they have, they're separate except for they're under our umbrella.
Exactly, right.
You know.
Yeah, and the only employees that are our employees are the special ed teacher and 3 special ed instructional assistants. They actually are paid and work for the Philomath School District.
Yeah, and that's something that's just changed in the last couple of years, when they changed the way that the funding and the pay gets done, correct?
We've been in the special ed business with them for quite a while.
Yeah,
But now.
but I mean, it just,
Oh, but we did change in this last charter how the money they receive.
yeah, but what I'm
Goes for
saying is,
special
it's
education.
the state, here, I don't know, maybe it's been longer than I think, but then they say that the sponsor district is responsible for the special ed finances and everything now, where we didn't used to be. They used to do it themselves.
No, it's always been that way as long as there's been a weighted funding. The district has either had to give it to them to be able to provide their own service or provide it from the district.
Well, I know, but now doesn't the law say that the district has to provide it?
But provision could mean in the hiring of personnel or the giving of resource for their hiring of their own
Okay,
personnel.
all right,
So,
I evidently misinterpreted or misunderstood that, because I thought that it all had to go through the district now, the sponsor.
it has to go through district oversight.
Because then
definitely.
it used to be, if they had special needs students from other districts, that district
Oh,
had
as
to
far
pay.
as that goes, yes,
And now it all comes from our district,
right,
pays everything.
right, because
Yeah.
once in a charter school, they become students of that charter school. Philomath becomes their resident district regardless of where they live.
Yeah, that's what I was talking
Yeah,
about.
you are right.
Well, yeah, sort of, kind of. I just didn't spit it out.
Between the
very
two
good.
of you, you were right.
We made it, we got it.
We got it.
It also says in April is OSBA policy update, we kind of do that all year long. rather
Yeah,
than
it's
waiting.
in here on several months, actually. It's just kind of dropped in randomly
Yeah,
throughout.
There's one in January.
I just happened to see it in
Yeah.
OSBA policy update as needed in
Yep.
January, April. But we try to do that every month and cut down on the amount at one time.
Yeah.
It's basically in here sort of quarterly is where it's in this, it's in the calendar 4 times, so
That was kind of the idea, but yeah, you're right, we do it as
as needed.
needed and as they surface.
Yeah.
I have a feeling there are gonna be quite a few of them this year because of legislative language change.
This is one that I really want to try to stick to this year, and it's pointed at you, Susan, and
Got
I'm
it.
not being judgmental or anything.
Oh, come
But
on.
in February, approval of teacher status, probationary renewal contract, and the administrator contract.
We're there.
Renewals by March 15th.
We're there.
Okay, but I mean, in the past,
It's been
and
a
not
long
just
hour.
you, other superintendents has let it slide until we get into that crunch, because we have to do that before March 15th.
And typically our March meeting is after March
Yeah.
15th.
Right.
Unless March
And-
15th
No,
happens.
that
to be
is
the Thursday.
duly noted and on a big radar for
But
February.
I'm
Yep.
telling Sandy and Ryan that this is a big thing for
Very
us, is that we have to do this before March 15th.
Right.
And there's been times we get into crunch time, and this last year was one of them. I think we had a meeting on the 14th
Yeah, we did.
that,
Right.
went through this process of, renewal or non-renewal, and to me, that's too late. It doesn't really give us enough time to process everything. But I wanna put that on
Yes,
your
you-
plate, that I wanna see that done at our February meeting
Yep.
rather than at our March meeting.
Got it.
And my list, it's on February.
Yep.
Well, yeah,
I know, it has
Okay,
been,
okay.
it has been, but we've not been very
Calendar
good at
versus
doing
actual.
it.
Gotcha.
We've not-
Discussion, yeah.
I've not been
Gotcha.
diligent about making sure that we've got all our answers and ducks in a row by that point.
Gotcha.
And it's just a matter of planning and organizing to make sure we have that information early.
Yeah,
I mean, we've gone through a few years of COVID and all sorts of other
Sure.
crap that has
Sure.
made for a very difficult
Right.
job for Susan, but even so, that's one of the most important, one of the many
Yeah.
important.
well,
things.
to me, it rates right up there as
Yeah. 1,
1, 2, or 3 maybe,
Yeah,
that,
well,
Yeah.
and we just can't get that wrong.
I know, yeah.
You're right.
No, that's, then in June,
There's one more in April. It says start board self-evaluation, plan agenda for board retreat, but it never says complete board self-evaluation anywhere on here. So
There
I
you
do think
go.
that might be a nice
in
thing.
this last year where people leaving the board, it wasn't a high priority, but maybe this year we can get, and that's on me. We can get that with the 2 new board members and teach them the value of doing the self-evaluation and what it means to the board and the district to be able to do that and get it right.
What she was
So-
talking
Can we
about.
put the completion
Yeah.
in June?
Yeah.
Self-evaluation is like back in school when the teacher let you give yourself your own grade.
Right.
It was always an A, right?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what it is, but we try to, hopefully would be a little bit more diligent.
You would know.
than
Yes, Rick, in February, March, February is reviewing the budget projection, establish a budget priority with budget committee.
Yep.
And then March is review facility plan. You have to review the facility plan, so you know what you're budgeting, because the facility plan should.
Well, budget, if you look at
So-
April, first thing in April, budget committee meetings don't actually even start till April. Everything before that is just work session and planning.
Yeah.
So
just
it's not a problem for it to be in March, but I understand your concern.
Yeah.
just seems it's written in the wrong order.
Uh,
I would think you'd review the facility plan budget before, and then you review it, and it's kind of the same thing, maybe.
Yeah, we have a lot of the facility stuff in the pre-budget meetings, and I say pre-budget meeting because the budget meetings actually start in April. So, the listening sessions and stuff, we try to incorporate some of the facility stuff. That's one of my things that I want to get back to now, and I've stated that during our budget process this last year, is that there's nothing set aside for long-range projects, roof replacements, HVACs, things like that, things that are very expensive
Right.
that we're not putting any money away for. So when they get here, we're like, what do we do now?
Well, I
So-
think we should hire a contract. I don't know what's been done in the past, so going forward, my thought is there needs to be a Excel program that has, here's the life expectancy of this and this, so you're not surprised.
Joey may have
We-
something like that.
He has, and in the past, we've had a very detailed list. When I was on the board, I'll say this the first time, we had a lot of planning and reports at board meetings of things, a 5-year plan and what was on it and how it was gonna be paid for. Somewhere that got dropped or whatever. I don't know exactly what happened to it, but it kind of went away.
It did when we had the projects ironed out, and then the first thing moved out of the budget to be able to account for other expenses was anything to do with facilities, and it got to a point where Joey was kind of saying, why do we have this facilities plan and information if the budget can't?
See, that's where I hope the board, as the leader in this district, will put a different focus on that.
I would agree.
And say, if, and I've said this many, many times, if we don't have buildings to teach in, we're not gonna have a district for teachers to teach in.
Bingo.
We have to have decent buildings and facilities to have a district. And if we don't put money away and plan for the facilities, we're not gonna have that.
Agreed,
So-
absolutely agreed.
So in February, we established budget priorities, and that's when that would happen.
Yeah.
That's when you would say, it's February, we're establishing our budget priorities in our first budget meeting, which is in February.
Yeah.
And then we learn more about the actual dollars and cents of it, but we establish the priorities before we have the exact figures, so that we can say, once we have those figures, these are the priorities. So it still happens in the right order.
I think that area is my strength, because I do that, like my operating ones are 2-year renewals, I budget out everything.
Well, that's good. You're the board.
So,
So we're all, we're
You
all,
open
He is
yourself up for
strong
that
in
one.
that, yeah.
So I just think that's an area I don't care to read, I like numbers better. I mean, I do better at that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
yeah.
Not
and
that
that's-
sort of stuff on the wall.
Yeah.
That's stuff we will get to later in this
Right,
packet,
but
is kind
we-
of determining
we
those
need-
roles.
Somebody like that
Yep,
to kind of
absolutely.
spearhead things and keep us
Yeah.
going in that direction, so.
So
Keep that in mind.
while we have the calendar out, this is just a proposal from me based on the summer conference.
Yeah.
That session I referenced earlier from Steve Kelly was talking about district vision and setting the direction that you want to take the district. And I know we do already have a vision statement for the district, which is
Well, we could change
on
that.
here, but it's been the same for a really long
I was gonna say,
time.
we can change that.
And in that presentation, he mentioned that he suggests that it is a 1-year process from start to finish, because it is something that is collaborative with the entire district, your voting group, people with kids in schools, people who don't have kids in schools, and they can actually help guide us through that. I have no idea how much it costs. I'm imagining it might be expensive, but I think it would be very worthwhile to do. And it doesn't, the reason I say they can help us with that is because they can give us a framework, and I think you can just get that from them.
And I have some
Well, you say
suggestions
that,
to
you say
consider
that it's
also.
expensive,
I don't know what
but
expensive
no,
means either.
wait till I finish, and you'll see that I'm on your side.
You're always on my
It's,
side.
it's expensive, but how expensive is if we don't do it?
Yeah,
So,
because the chief comes out expensive.
right, and it's, yeah, so anyhow, even if it costs money to get
Mm-hmm.
it done, at least it'll be done right.
And
Hopefully, you know, hopefully it will be done right, and, with their help, I mean, they do this all the time.
Yeah,
It's just like our superintendent evaluation this last year, you know,
that was great.
well, when I did that, you know, contacted them and going through the process, kind of hoped it would be an every other year thing, and then the off years, we do it ourselves, but the more I think about it, it costs money, but it's done right when they do it, it's an outside group, and there's no way of tracing where things came from. It's all independent, and the biggest thing the year before that is that people didn't want to give a true response because, well, you can go through the district emails and find out who it came from. Which, you know, if we wanted to get really down to the nitty gritty of things, we could do that, but we're not gonna do that. And as far as I'm concerned, if somebody got caught doing that, you know, there'd be some consequences for it. I don't,
Because that's not
I'm not,
ethical.
yeah, it's not ethical, it's not the way I wanna do things.
Yeah.
If somebody gives an anonymous response, to me, it should stay anonymous.
Mhm.
And that's what all of those were intended to be, was anonymous responses, but people wouldn't give an honest comment because of the reprisals that they feared,
Yes.
true or not.
Yep.
So anyhow,
Part
I
of the
just,
problem in a district this small is the fact that even if it is anonymous, they usually want demographic data, so if you find, well, this was a teacher at Blodgett. This was
that
an
narrows it
administrator
down.
at Blodgett.
That narrows it
Only
down.
one of those.
And the
Yeah,
other
two of
thing
those,
is, no
or
matter how
whatever.
hard we try as a board, we only know, and I say
Well,
this all
so-
the time, I'm such a broken record, we only know what we know.
Mhm.
And that evaluation brought in factors that weren't on my radar, so that was why I really appreciated it
Yeah,
also. I thought that was
if
very
somebody
important.
comments about something, like Joe just said, this is a small enough district, even though it's anonymous, they said that, you know?
Right.
But we'll be able to point a finger at maybe 2 or 3 people, but it'll be a very small group that came from, that comment came from. That's what I don't
Were you
like,
comfortable with that
I was
process
fine,
also?
I was fine.
but with,
Okay,
you know, with using OSBA, they send out the questions, we don't even know what the questions are until they come back, when they answer the questions, and he comes to us with the responses and everything, then we get the graph and the bars and all that kind of stuff, and what the responses were and what percentages, and, but we still never know who said what or anything else, so I think it's a very good way of doing it. Yeah, does it cost the district some money? But I think it's money well spent.
I think so too.
So, but that's something that the 5 of us will have to decide a little later in the
Yep.
year.
Mhm.
But I don't wanna wait as long as we did this last year to do it. I wanna get going a little earlier on it.
And it would be nice to have that year-over-year data, so
Yeah.
that we're not
Yeah,
pulling from different questions
Doing one
each
thing
time,
or
but
the other.
really
Yeah.
giving, just because it's you, giving Susan the opportunity to say, this is an area of opportunity that was identified, and here's what I did to improve there.
yeah,
And then our hope is that we see that that's reflected in people's responses.
right.
And maybe not in year 1, and we see a ton of it in year 2, or whatever it might be, but that allows that growth pattern to show.
But
So I'm hoping we can include that for the district vision, that we can add that into this calendar somewhere. I don't know what the timing would be for it, but
Well,
I think it would be nice
I
to
was
pick it
just gonna
off.
say, hopefully sometime in November,
Okay.
I can contact OSBA and, get the ball rolling on the superintendent evaluation.
Okay,
Um,
so kick off.
Can I ask a question, I'm sorry, just wondering about it.
Only if you're sitting at the table.
Only,
Oh, yeah, no, it's not.
Let's
table.
count the
Let's get
kiddies.
this table together.
So when I have new teachers, like for 3 years, they're probationary. So it's more formal. I'm in their classroom, there's this, and then once they become contract, they have an on year and then they have an off year and they have an on year and off year. But every year, even when they're an off year, they set goals. And I think that's just like, and so when I think about like, principals, like, it's like, when I would meet with Dr. Noss, it was like, we do like a 360 eval, teachers do surveys, all that, and it was like, oh, but it's good feedback. I would take those next year on my off cycle year, I'd be still meeting with Ryan saying, these are my goals I was working on, but it was almost like I wondered if everybody got a survey on me every year in the building, if it would be like, well, I filled that out last year, so it's a wondering about, why maybe in superintendent's it's not similar to an on year, off year.
Well, for one thing, the superintendent leads the district.
Yeah.
Not that your job's not very important.
Right, yeah.
But I think the superintendent's job, whether it's Susan or whether it was Melissa or Buzz or whoever has been the superintendent here, I think we need to get yearly feedback on how the community views what they're doing, how the staff views what they're doing, and how the board feels what they're doing. So I think it needs to be yearly. Do we repeat ourselves sometimes? Sure.
Yeah.
But are people gonna have that kind of attitude, like, well, I just did this last year, I don't really need to do it this year?
Yeah.
But I would be in hopes that I think we had 30-some people last year that they sent, the eval to.
They asked us last year for the names of 30 to 35 people.
Yeah.
In a cross section, and so we had community members, we had, association members, we had administrators, we had,
Certified, classified.
certified, classified, community organizations.
Yeah.
And so the benefit with that is, just kind of as a for instance, our association leadership responded, our association's leadership responded. That leadership changes from year to year. But if you want to see what the overall impact or sense of where your associations lie, even though the people are different, you can continue to see that in its history. And so it's not always like asking the same people every year, but yeah.
It's not a survey.
She's such a busy
Phone
body.
just starts
So,
turning my watch.
What I would like to see is, we'll do like the association, because there's different leadership in the association. That this year, but where we did individuals or a group, rather than doing the same ones, do a different one.
Absolutely, that's what,
So that we get different feedback every year from each one.
So are they handpicked?
Pretty much, yeah. We
In the sense that we try to
each
get
We as a
submitted
board-
some ideas.
Yeah,
that
we
would
as a
like to
board
reach out to.
gave ideas, and then when it came down to the final,
you and I sat
yeah, I
together.
think Susan and I sat together, and kind of handpicked who we thought
That's
would
sort of trying to around.
who would give the best, who would be knowledgeable to give good feedback.
And just to like level set, I work for a corporation with about 6,000 employees. That's how we do it too. So your supervisor will choose people. It's a 360. We do it every single year. But if I know I worked on a special project for 6 months with someone, I want to make sure I get their feedback. So I will tell my boss, hey, can you make sure you also ask these 3 people? They might have insight because they're outside of our department. It's the same kind of a thing. So it's,
Yeah.
we have a tendency to treat the district like a really small business, which in reality, we have enough employees that it's
It
not
is.
a really small business.
Yeah.
And we also have everyone who lives in Philomath as part of that. So sometimes we have to approach it with a little bit more of like a corporate mindset, which benefits us as much as sometimes I'm like, I work for a corporation. I'm one of them. But there are a lot of benefits to thinking
So anyhow,
holistically
in
that way.
November, I will
Thank you.
get hold of OSBA and get this process
Sounds good.
started.
And then when you do that outreach, can you also ask them what it would look like to have that board vision assistance as we're looking at building a new board vision
this?
statement? Yeah,
Okay,
just not necessarily that we need to have it done this year, but since they did mention that it can be like a full year process, just to kind of get an idea of what that would look like. And obviously, a school district, a lot of the time, we are doing much longer goal setting, but
yeah,
the going thought is that your vision should be for 3 years, and then every 3 years you reassess it, and you change your goals every year, of course, to support it, but.
Okay,
I would do vision statement. Vision, prepare students for life.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
what's that?
Each and
My
every
new-
student for
My new
life.
vision statement,
I do think each and every
prepare
is
students for
important.
life.
Oh,
Each and
well,
every
yeah,
I like.
Yeah, set that
yeah,
and wrote it down.
Forever.
Each and every I really like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
each and every. I wrote it down when you said it somewhere, oh, right there. Each and
Yeah.
every.
so yeah, that's something I will get a hold of them about.
Thank you, Rick, I appreciate
I mean,
that.
does anybody have any changes that they wanna see to this?
I have some changes to propose.
Okay,
And I think I can just give them to you. And it was based on some conversation we had last year about how do our board goals and our superintendent goals align?
Mhm.
And so I'll just give them to you, so that we can, and I think there should be.
Yep, we have exactly the right amount for over here.
So what I started playing with was if the superintendent goals look like this on the left, and the school board goals, so if I say, for instance, one of my goals is to ensure equitable opportunities for every student, the school board goal says we're gonna base our decisions on equitable support and advocacy for the academic and social emotional needs of all students and staff. So it was really saying, how do the board goals and the superintendent goals line up? So, you know, the next school board one was serve as stewards of the district resources to support long-term, and I also changed in here immediate, I did on the other one, immediate and long-term needs for academic, social, and economic sustainability. And so that's saying, if we want to promote ongoing success and growth, including academic as well as social emotional, and we want to provide a safe, welcoming, respectful, and rigorous learning environment, then we're going to make sure that we are, as stewards of the resources of the district, pointing towards that. If we've got providing leadership opportunities to administrators and others as appropriate in the district, part of that was about being able to, I'll call it share the load, because we're not a district that has a human resource director and a curriculum director and a secondary education advisor and a this and a that we're really talking about considering and adopting policy that supports those needs and infrastructure to be able to make sure that we can do those kinds of things. If we want to support effective communication, if that's my goal, because that was a goal that the board asked me to add, that we are going to, as a board, foster open communication and continue meaningful engagement. And so it was really more of a look, instead of, it's how do those things begin to align? If there is agreement that these goals are appropriate for me, or if we agree that the other side is if these are appropriate goals for the board, then how do we make sure that the goals that are set for me line up there? And so it was really trying to make it more of a connected process. And then I put down below that, if there was agreement that these superintendent goals were appropriate for me, here was some of the measure and ideas of things that I had thought of. When you get to the third page, the PSD vision and key success factors, which is what Melissa came up with, I am proposing a revamp of some of these. For instance, we start looking now at, I think, for instance, third grade reading at and above grade level is an absolutely rock star appropriate measure to be able to have. But there's also, we have now ventured into something that's called DESA, which is a screener tool for social emotional health of kids. I would like to be able to put that in so we can start to recognize some of that, and really change some of these, how do we know we're getting there?
Right.
But this, in the interest of time and stuff too, I wanted to throw it out there to say, here's some things I'm thinking,
Yeah,
and it would just be good to look at, and I think we can add it to the 21st
yeah.
to be able to have more dialogue about it, but it was something that I thought of that might be a different way to look at.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. With the two things that I really want to get through tonight before 8, we only got a short period of time, is board liaison
Yes.
roles.
Yep.
I
Can
want
we
to tackle that.
table the vision and goals conversation and have another work group?
Yes.
And we'll just say for now, we're continuing with these, but we're
Yeah.
going to.
we
And then
are-
maybe in November or December,
Yeah.
we can have Does that,
That's on my
That's
to-do list.
great.
I like that.
But tonight,
Liaison.
I wanna do this, and I wanna check a date on everybody's calendar that we can, get back with OSBA and finish this conversation.
Yes. She was fantastic, by the way.
I thought she was very good.
Yep.
So anyhow, oh, I see, they've already put different
I think
names
they
on
just
here.
dropped
I think they just dropped
Sandy
it.
and
Yeah, they
Ryan
just dropped
into
it, yeah, they just dropped
her,
it in, so yeah.
Christopher and Aaron.
And I just gave Ryan facilities, because I
Ryan
said
and
that's.
I am very happy with facilities. I have no interest in the, I shouldn't say I have no interest, but the OSCA relations and negotiation leads.
Yeah, let's just start fresh. We'll
All right,
ignore,
well,
but we'll just make sure we hit all these.
let's go by the schools first, and I'm gonna go first, and I wanna be PHS liaison this year.
Good,
That's something that I have not done, and I feel there's a need, for me to be involved in that, so I wanna do the PHS
Okay,
this year.
Okay,
Okay.
right, and Ryan, you wanted,
so there's a couple things I see here. I work with the Lions Club with the auction.
Let's start with the schools first.
So
Let's just do one at a
elementary
time.
school.
Elementary
Yeah,
schools,
my kids are in there, so I have the most connection.
now that PES and Blodgett,
Right.
you understand it's Blodgett and
Yeah, that's
PES,
fine.
okay.
so it's
Ryan
That's
is.
true.
this
Yeah.
gentleman right
Yeah,
here
so,
will be
yeah,
our
you know where to
liaison.
find me.
Do you do a site council?
We don't do a site council. We use our PTO as kind of our liaison staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to visit later about our public access property right down the road. We have a 200-acre public access property right there. You can take your kids there.
Okay, we'll talk.
Cool.
um,
The Crest Farm
So-
interest.
Aaron, where did you want to be?
I am fine staying at the middle school, or if somebody else would like to do that, I can go elsewhere.
Because well, obviously I'm not PS budget anymore, so I can do anything. I would be more comfortable probably at the middle school
Okay.
than at CPS.
Yeah, that's fine.
I would love to be at CPS.
Okay.
Okay, we'll keep you there, then I'll be with the academy.
Okay, so Sandy, you're what? Sorry,
CPS.
You're CPS, so Aaron, you're gonna be academy, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
that sounds good. I
Yeah,
love
'cause I
the
was
academy.
academy last year.
so now we can go into the subcategories is what I'll call them, so, Ryan, you wanted to be with Lions Club?
I think that makes sense, because we're,
Yeah.
Sure,
I
Yeah.
think
so I'll take myself off that.
taking me away from pool committee, because I can't swim.
Well, you sink like a rock then. Yeah, since I'm gonna be at the high school, I'll do the pool.
Okay.
Very cool. So are you both gonna be facilities, or is that just gonna be Ryan?
I think it's good to have two. That's what we did.
The Facilities and
last
safety?
I mean, I don't know what you should give me being the first, I have no background information.
Sure, well, you know.
So, but I'm happy, that's the stuff I understand.
Okay, so, did you want me, does somebody else wanna take the pool committee, otherwise
I think Rick said he'll do it.
Yeah, I said I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it'll be PHS.
Yeah.
Who was on OSEA last year?
I was,
It was Joe
and,
and
Relations and
Karen. No,
negotiations.
Joe and,
um,
no, maybe it was Karen.
Was it
I
Karen?
would be happy to step
Karen,
into
Karen
that.
was on PEA.
So it might have been,
it was
Andy.
me and Andy, right?
Okay.
Yes, it was.
So I would be happy to
When is-
step into that. It's
Okay,
When is their
this
contract up? It's not.
June 30
This year.
this year, so they will
So we'll be in
start
negotiations
sometime during the spring.
They will propose to
Okay.
bargain for this, beginning this
So who
spring.
wants to do that, Aaron?
I'll do it.
I'll continue, and then
Just-
Aaron wants to do it too, okay.
So wait a minute, please define OSCA.
That's the
Our
classified,
Classified
Thank you.
union.
yeah, classified union.
I love that I have to do it still too. I'm like,
Tell
me what the letters mean.
Acronyms are we.
Well,
I
there's
need
a
a
lot of them
glossary.
that are, PEA is Columbus Education.
Sure, I got that.
Association,
Yeah.
so,
it took me a
OSEA,
minute to get that.
what's that, Ryan?
We have this that says board liaison roles.
Yep.
Anybody care to share with Sandy and I what?
What we do in these
Yeah, we
roles.
have
Yeah,
names here. Anybody care to tell us what
absolutely.
this is?
So
Okay.
I can give, for example, at the middle school, Steve Bell, the principal of the middle school, holds a site council meeting every Monday, or not every Monday, every month. And I would attend that, and it's an opportunity to hear what's going on in the school district a little bit, or in the school building a little bit. Teacher appreciation opportunities that they want to do. So I got to serve coffee to the teachers one morning. That was really fun. Actually, we delivered it to the classrooms in like little to-go boxes. It was really cute. If there's a big fundraiser coming up, like turkey bingo, things like that, which I don't even know when the last, they didn't do it last year, did they?
No, they didn't.
No, because the outdoor school's funded now, but we used to do fundraisers a lot for outdoor school. When outdoor school's happening, it's that kind of thing. As well as if there's anything that he felt was important for the school board to be aware of. And he's a great communicator, so I never had to communicate back to the board. It was always things that we already knew about, but maybe an update on the progress of how something was going. So for the elementary school, you'll have fun with our meetings
like in
here.
my recent world, a couple times a year, my board rep would come to our PTA meeting and just come in and then just, share what the board's working on. The things you're talking about tonight, you'd be like, just updating things that were relevant to that group, and then, just showing your face. But you're already committing to a lot of meetings here, so I wouldn't be like, hey, Ryan, I'm gonna come to every PTO meeting. That's not what I would, but I think with just what Aaron said, those kinds of things are great opportunities to just know that we have a board that's connected and cares about what's going on.
So part of,
And then like Lions Club, you just go to the meeting, and if there's something that we should know about as a district, you would just tell us.
so one thing I came to this meeting to ask a question on is, there appears from the outside looking in, because of course I'm brand new to this, there's a huge disconnect between teachers and the school board. We met I went around, met some prior to the election and things, and there's a chain of command, which I don't follow rules, so I have a hard time with chain of commands, because like speed limits or suggestions. I'm not a rule follower, so I don't care necessarily chain of commands. I want the information, so I was hoping that there would be a representative from a school came to each school board meeting with an update. That sounds like that would be our job, to go to the school as a liaison, get the update. Because what I heard from the teachers is, it's almost like they're scared of the school board, even over this contract that the negotiation were part of. It's almost like you're competing against each other, but nobody should be competing. You're all on the same team. So I see a big disconnect from the school board to the teachers, is what I've heard when I went around and asked questions.
Excuse me.
And so I was hoping we got a representative from the school to be present, like an update. Here, what does our school need? I'm not
They come and do
interested.
that.
Well, the thing is PEA comes to the district, comes to the board meeting every month, and is supposed to give us an update of the association, which is all the teachers.
And that's Dave and Nicole.
Yes,
Right.
right now.
But in the past, we have not got much of an update of the association. Because I think last year there was probably, and I'm just gonna go off the top of my head, 4 or 5 months that the representative was at the meeting and no comment.
What I'd like for a comment would be like, this school, I hate to say the word I don't care. I don't care about personality conflicts. I care about the school. I work in 5-year segments. The school needs, here's what's great with the school, here's what we could really help us.
Yeah.
I like to have those updates, not Fred and Sally don't get along.
Well, yeah, that's,
We don't.
But I want to hear, like, I'd like to hear from, being new, I'd like to go to every school and say, okay, what is it, get the teachers together, what is it you guys feel? I don't necessarily want to hear from a person that represents the school. I want this to collaborative school, like the teachers of the elementary school, at a board meeting or something, I go sit in and say, can you guys tell me your vision for the school, what works well, what you need? Because then if I'm on the facilities and planning committee, or facilities and safety or whatever, that helps me understand. But I'd rather hear it from the collaborative group of people in that building versus somebody that came to the building and relate it.
well, you're gonna have to be very careful in how that relationship is handled. When they're talking to you about things and,
I don't object to those meetings.
no, but
My setup with that is to be able to say, if you want those kinds of meetings, work with the school principal and me to establish those, so that both the principal and the superintendent and/or are there when you meet with a group of
And which
teachers.
is fine, I'd like
Yeah.
it to be not a one-on-one meeting, I'd like it to be when is the appropriate time to go to that school? And I think I speak for Sandy and I both, we not have any background in
Right.
this. I would like to go to the school, meet, I hate getting information third party, I'd rather be there, even if it's only 10 minutes where the teachers have a chance.
Yep.
Basically, I just wanna know, hey, what works well in this school?
Yep.
What do you guys think we need to improve on? There's no decisions made, I just wanna
No.
hear from the people.
Okay, but no, to me, Susan hit the nail on the head when, if you wanna go to the primary school, that's fine. But Susan and Abby are gonna be present when you
Great.
meet with
Yep.
the teachers.
And if you
And-
want, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all right. But that's the only time that I would consider it being appropriate is if Susan and the principal are both in attendance when you meet with, you know.
I would like
Sure.
Susan, the principal, to set up the date.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
And if that's what you
Exactly.
want me to
That's
do,
what I
I'm
would like.
happy to do
And I
that.
feel exactly the same way,
I'm
and
happy
I'd
to
like
do
to
that.
be tag-alongs,
So
because
it
we're
needs
the
to
new
be-
kids
Well,
on the block.
I would rather see, and this is just me, Ryan go at one time, you go at another time, because maybe they'll talk to you about different things that they talk to Ryan about.
But are they going to do that with the principal and superintendent on board?
It's possible.
They usually will.
They-
Talk about different things, I
Yeah.
mean, would they
Yeah.
talk
There's
to
not
Brian
much
about
that they're
different
gonna
things
talk
than
to you
me?
about that they
More than
haven't already
likely.
talked to Susan about.
That's why I'm wondering if,
The other part of that for me that has, well, and I've seen it in other districts, not to say that it would happen here, but, in certain situations when, a group of, a board member goes to listen to a group of teachers, and a group of teachers then have something to say that is, well, if only the district would do, but I know nothing about it. Yet I'm supposed to be the management of the district, and I have no clue. What does that do to support and/or undermine my role or the principal's role? I mean, it's kind of like if they're not gonna say it with the principal and/or me there,
It's not worth saying.
that's a problem. If it's against me, then that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
But if people have something that they want to say that can't be said in front, I mean, it's not a personal issue.
right,
It can't be said in front of the principal or myself.
right.
That can become a big problem in a real fast way.
Sure, I
And
understand
also-
that, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, like, instead of making this like separate in and out, in and out, in and out, I mean, why couldn't we go? I mean, I still want people to see the school board as a team.
Yep.
As a working team that is also wanting to hear them, listen to them. I'm not saying fix the problem right away, but I just didn't see the harm in Ryan and I doing this together.
Well, I'm wondering, nice of you and I, how about,
Or anybody.
how about all of
No,
us?
no, because then you've got a board
Can't
meeting.
all
It
do
has to be a
that.
public session, it would have to be,
But it could be a meet or
advertised,
two new board
everything.
meetings.
Exactly.
Board members.
could be
Exactly.
two board members maximum,
Yep.
because then it's not an official meeting.
I mean, if Susan's all right with it, with the two, you know, I'd be all right with it, but I just feel that there's different things that would come out when two different board members are approached separately as opposed to at the same
And
time.
I can see where down the line, it would be more advantageous for us to go separately. But going to what Aaron said, like more of a.
I'm happy to do that.
Meet
Happy to set that
your
up.
board members,
Okay.
here we are, we're here because we're interested,
Yeah.
what you
Alright.
got, bring
No,
it. And
if Susan's okay with that, then that's great.
And I think when those schools have, you said that with the principal, when there's normally a staff meeting or something that's the appropriate time, it shouldn't be go classroom to classroom, it should be,
No.
Right, no,
here's
it's
the whole
this,
staff,
Yeah,
here's the
Be
library.
hanging in the library.
right, we're gonna be here at this
Right.
time.
And there's no formal presentation even, it could just
No.
be, people could ask as a group, or Santa could just sit there, people could come up, I don't know how that works, but.
Oh, yeah, and when in past, before I was on the school board, I mean, back when I was a teacher, occasionally we'd have a school board member come in and the staff would just share cool things and neat things they were doing in their classroom.
And I'd love to hear it, yeah,
Something like that's fine, but what I don't want it to turn into is a bitch session.
right, and we can cut that off, the principal can cut that
Yeah.
off, Susan can
Well,
cut
it
that
probably
off.
won't turn into that with Susan and the principal there.
Exactly,
But if the board member was there by themselves, because I kind of stepped over the bounds a little bit this last year, be right honest with it, Susan will acknowledge it.
You had some help.
Huh?
You had some help.
Oh, I did, I thought I was going down to meet a couple teachers, and it turned out there was several teachers around the table, and I felt really, I won't say intimidated, because it's pretty hard to intimidate me, I don't
Sure.
intimidate
But did
easy.
you feel bombarded?
I felt bombarded.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't get into conversations, I just listened, it was a
Sure.
listening session,
Sure,
but I was a little taken back on the amount of people that was there.
sure.
That's what I wanna try to avoid, is something like that, if you wanna.
And one of the things I would just say real quickly, is make sure you remember, keep in the back of your minds, our training tonight, we're not here to micromanage.
Right.
So we're,
Right.
if they're bringing little problems that really should be going to the principal, or bigger problems that should be going to the superintendent,
Right.
it's not our job to deal with those, so.
Exactly.
So what Rick just said though is what I heard as from a community is the disconnect. So Rick got bombarded with people with complaints. That's where I feel there's a big disconnect, because obviously those people had something to say. They need to be how and when and who, and I don't know how all that works, but if there's a frustration level amongst the employees, it can't work. I mean, everybody's got it, so if there is a dozen people that were, how do they do that? That's.
Well, the biggest problem is, they won't go see her.
Right.
That's the biggest problem right now, is they whine, cry, complain, however you wanna call it, but they will not go see her about it.
And do we know why?
I don't know why, I don't think
Have we
Susan knows
asked
why.
them?
I don't, but I'm trying to work through that.
I was gonna say, why,
I
have
have
we
been told
asked
by a
them?
couple of them,
We
they
also
are
have to
told in their contract.
What we
Wait,
say in a public
We're in a
session.
public
just-
session.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I've been told by people that they are told by their group leader, whatever, that they are not allowed to talk to Susan or to a board member. So I've been told by,
My door's always open,
So
but
I have
I
also been told the
understand
same.
that's
as,
what you're
as a
hearing.
non-board
I
member,
have been
as
told
a
the same
citizen,
thing, and I
I've
was
been.
very quick to,
Yeah, and I'll just
reassure
make
them
that
that's
a
not
public
the
piece of
case.
information.
So
My door is always
So
open.
maybe the teachers need to be retold that, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard that as a citizen prior to being board member.
That works for me.
okay.
So that's.
and I did when.
I'm happy to do that.
That's
I've gotten
something
a
that
few phone
Susan,
calls over the years, and that's what I always tell people, so it was like, I never once have felt that I couldn't go to Susan to talk, as a parent, as a community member,
Right.
and our teachers definitely need to be aware of that also.
Well,
So,
it's your mind
yeah.
to start
Thank you.
forward.
No, that's
Absolutely.
good,
That's
but I'm
really
happy to
good.
work on starting to set some stuff.
Yeah, let's do. I mean, that's the whole part of, we're all on the same team, which is Team Kid, Team
but
Student.
there should be anybody afraid to go into Susan's door and say, hey, I need to talk to you about something.
Absolutely, and we just have to get to the root level of why is that there? Let's make it known,
Yeah,
but
so anyhow, that's,
Within the two board meetings that I've been to, it has seemed almost awkward with the two, I don't know, I don't remember their names, the two,
PEA representatives.
yes. In the school board, there seems to be friction, tension, just sitting there, that's.
There's more friction and tension when we're in the middle of negotiations.
Negotiations.
Now that's over, there should be a little
Even there
less.
wasn't, negotiation, just when they come, there seems.
But we were
We were in the middle of
Okay.
negotiations.
Yeah.
You were feeling
We
that.
weren't negotiating there, but we hadn't signed.
Yeah, there's
But
always
even in that
tension.
negotiation, you should still be on the same team.
Absolutely.
Well, you are, but you're representing two different factions that are trying to do best. The district's trying to do best with what's for the district, and they're trying to do what's best for their people,
Right.
and there's gonna be a little rub
that's
in
what I
the
was
middle of
thinking
that.
of.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't care how good we get along, I mean, it's a lot better now than it used to be when I first came on the board.
Yes.
When I first came on the board, and I'll share this real quick because we're way past due, but they kicked their representative out of the negotiations because he was being a jerk.
Oh, they did it.
They did, their representative, you're out of here
So they were
because you're
cool.
making things really rough for us. So, I mean, since then, both sides have tried to make collaborative negotiations
Okay.
and work together, and I think it's worked very well this last time for sure. And when I was on the board before, towards the end of that, it was getting better than it had been before, so we're getting better and better at working
When
together.
Rick came onto the board about halfway through my teaching, but early in my teaching, I'll just share one real quick. We were in the middle of a mediation session, which you may not know what that is. That's when negotiations basically comes to a standstill.
Yeah.
And
The
you have
last
to bring
thing
in a
before the
mediator.
strike.
Right.
And one of the board members piped up with this statement He said, well, we have the money, we just don't want to give it to you. And he said that in a mediation session. And it's like, okay, well, mediation's over.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why this last one went well, because we were like, we want to give it to you, but we don't have it. It's just a very different
I think
perspective.
tonight though was case in point, when we could go back and say, here's the language and here's what we talked about, what do we wanna do? And it was done, and I emailed the PEA folks to say, this is what happened tonight.
We're good.
Yeah.
So, that's just good practice. that-
Okay,
So we're,
So I made a
higher on
list.
that. They have me and you
well,
down
let's cut this off here, but what I want from everybody around the table is email me what you want to do.
Okay.
Okay.
And I will kind of fill in the blanks and try to get people in.
I pulled out the list of the ones that nobody has claimed thus
It-
far
it-
this
It's
evening,
fine, but
so.
that's, I'll figure that out when everybody, because then when we cut this meeting off and I can do this on my time.
Okay.
And then, you put down what you want to do, and then we'll plug things in, and
Make
then at
sure
our
we got
next
them all.
meeting, we'll finalize everything.
So a quick question.
Yep.
So city council, chamber of commerce, what are we doing?
City council, you usually go to maybe one or two meetings.
Okay.
You don't have to go to every one.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
That's what we
what we
went
hear.
to, that when we introduced ourselves, was at a city council meeting?
that was frolic.
No, when we went,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And
So-
same with chamber?
And chamber I go to all the time.
Yeah,
anyway.
Susan goes to
Yeah,
chamber
but
all the
there.
time.
Yeah, but it would just
Ooh, that was a
be,
chamber meeting.
It was chamber.
yeah,
It
it would
would-
just be a connection, we can talk about the specifics, and I think a lot of this goes way back to a place of, where do we want to, recognize that team venture
Okay.
and,
that would be
provide
one
a
of
community
those-
way.
Yeah.
That would be one of those
I
things that,
understand.
a couple, 3 times a year maybe
Yeah.
to go to a meeting on.
CTE is,
That's the
Career
that's the
Career and technical
ed,
Career
that's our
technical
forestry,
is
our
that vocational?
vocational ed,
Yeah.
we used to call it
Yeah,
vocational ed.
vocational,
Okay.
Health sciences.
Do you understand
Yes,
that?
health scientists.
Yeah.
Graphic
Understand the word,
design.
not an abbreviation.
Right, exactly.
Yes, education is all about abbreviations.
And SEAC and EVAC?
SEAC is
Down
the
below
Special
is about-
Education
Advisory
Advisory
Oh,
Committee.
thank you, okay.
I'm not sure what EBAC is, that's
The
not.
emerging bilingual
Emerging
advisory committee.
bilingual, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so just, send me what you would like to do, and then I'll kind of plug everybody in, and
Okay,
if you have some of them that nobody wants, I'll plug you in anyhow.
And all of
I
these
just
could
texted them
be
to
two
you, but I can
people,
email them too.
all these can be 2 people, but not more than, but 3 can't be, like.
Right,
Yeah,
you can
and
only have
most of
2
them only
people,
need
then it's not a
one.
So
quorum.
2 people could go to Chamber of Commerce meeting.
Right.
If you wanted
But you
to.
couldn't have 3.
Or,
That's
well,
one.
you can have 3 people sign up for it, as long as they don't all go to the same meeting.
Oh,
And then it's
okay.
quorum.
And-
okay.
One is plenty, and not even going to every single meeting is
Right.
also fine.
Yeah.
You said email
We
you
do
that?
need 2
Yeah.
for the
Email or
negotiation
text, whichever.
committees
Okay.
and 2 for the policy committee.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that we need to have 2 for.
Yeah.
And the rest of them, I think, are just 1.
Yeah, PEA, OSEA, and the policy, we need
Policy.
2 on
Which
each
I
one of
have-
those.
I have volunteered myself to do all 3 of those.
And
Yeah.
youth activities,
Yeah,
something.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
one of
we
you
have
wants
to
to
do
be involved in the policy subcommittee to learn about it, but if not, Sandy, I can take yours away and then.
Thank you very
That'd
much.
be great, yeah.
Thank you.
It's very,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's very important, it's very much a lot of,
It is.
a lot of
I'll let you
I was,
detail.
I
lead
was
and you
on,
can just tell me
I was
what
on
to
that
do.
subcommittee at one time, and
training, but
then
it's
I got off the
pretty
school board, and then they haven't got me back on it, so.
And that's why you're having the emails sent to you. That's why you're having the emails sent to you.
I will say that we are going to see quite a few coming through, but most of them are gonna be really minor language changes.
Policy.
And
Well, that's
the
good.
district.
Well, I hope we're staying up on the policies, that we're not gonna see.
And they're
a lot
about
of
2
them.
hour long meetings. usually,
So,
maybe a
okay,
little longer.
We're gonna have a meeting on the 21st, right?
Mhm.
Do
So,
we have executive session?
yes,
Yes,
we'll have
we will.
executive
Okay, so
session,
we'll be there at 6?
probably at 6 o'clock.
Maybe 5:30.
I love how Michelle calls, the great thing with Michelle, I hate text message, email, and all that stuff, so Michelle will call me like, hey, we need to be there at 4:30, I'm great, I'll
No,
just call.
she's
She's good, she
Yeah.
is. I appreciate her.
If you come up with something that you'd like to see on the agenda,
Yes,
either probably just send it to me, and then I'll get, because Susan and I will meet probably the week prior.
Okay.
And we'll set the agenda,
that was gonna be one of my
have everything
questions.
on it.
Huh?
That was gonna be one of my questions, like, how do you come up with the agenda? So you guys work on
And
it.
then
Pretty
is
much.
this the one you just put together? or
No,
is this what
that's
we already
the,
have?
that's the one that we've
Okay.
already had.
So Susan, you'll set up, meetings after school.
Yep, yep.
And kind of let us know.
Do you have an idea? I would like mornings, I don't know when they do their thing, but it's easier for me to start somewhere in the morning, because then we travel 3 counties. I
Like
don't
before
know.
school?
Well, just any
Yeah.
AM before.
If it was mornings, it would have to be before school if we wanted the majority of
Okay.
staff,
Or
but we can set up some options.
morning
So-
or evening, just not midday.
Okay.
Like today I'm working in Harrisburg, I have to park my tractor to get back here, I'd rather park my tractor 3 hours later.
Yeah.
So mornings or evenings,
Yeah.
just not middays. Middays are bad for me.
And, so yeah, I can start working on that stuff and,
Except for the third Wednesday, because that's 4-H.
I don't know, do
No, wait,
teachers
you can
have
change that.
Thursdays or?
I already have one.
Fridays are early release days, and so sometimes that's an opportunity to be able to, catch people.
But again, that would be right after
That'd be
lunch.
midday.
Yeah, that would be midday
I'd rather when you
or
already have a meeting, when there's already the teachers,
after school. Typically, that would be a
No, I mean,
3 o'clock,
when do
3:15.
you do staff meetings?
3:10,
After
first
school.
Wednesday of the month,
Okay, so.
First Wednesday, 3:10.
and third Wednesday at 3:10.
Is every school, does every school
No,
do the same
each
thing?
a little
school sets
bit
their own.
different for
Each
every
school sets
school.
their
Do
own.
you come to them?
I don't go to all of them.
Okay.
But every.
When I was at the high school, they would do
Okay.
them at 7:30 on Friday, but I think they've changed that. I
And
don't
if we
know.
the
do the
middle
month of
school's on a
October,
Wednesday,
November,
and
right,
it's like
that's our slower
The
time.
second Wednesday,
So I'm
but I
good,
can't
we can
recall.
do it 3 o'clock.
Just
and
email
that's-
Steve and
Okay.
he'll add you to his invitation, he's very
Not
good about
in-
sending the info in
We start
advance.
like March, my slowest time of the year is October.
Okay.
Not much.
So.
All right, that's good to know.
So maybe,
Thank you.
like, give us a couple of options
Yep,
that
I will.
we can figure
I
out.
will.
Perfect.
So-
This felt like we did something. I really like this meeting.
Okay,
You wanna-
are we adjourned, sir?
Yes, we are adjourned,
Okay,
sorry.
I'm gonna,
And then Susan, I also would like to just meet with
I
the
love-
academy
Are
since
you
it's a
gonna
new
put those
liaison.
hamburgers in the
Yeah,
freezer
but,
back there? I don't know if
it
you
would
wanna
be
leave them
you
or
and
take
Beth
them
who
out.
would reach out to?
Okay.
Beth and myself.
Okay, that's what I figured, I just wanted to double check.
And Susan's taking the brownies with her?
Yes, I asked.
I
you to.
have one and